What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It's time for our Week 17 NFL preview. And we're starting a little bit early here today. Got a hard out. So we're gonna cruise through it here, Sam. Week 17.
No cruising. You gotta fire through it. You gotta be gone.
Yes, all 16 games, and it's Week 17. It's the last week of the season for me. I'm not doing Week 18. Refuse.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that won't work.
You've always been against the final week.
I'm against it. I don't want to work it. I don't want to do it. As I've said, my body clock is saying this is it. This is all I can grind out as far as 10 games in the 1 p.m. window this week. That's all I can do. So let's do it. It all starts tonight. New York Jets at the Cleveland Browns. It's the last Thursday night football game of the season, Sam. This is it. Wrapping it up with Jets and Browns. Browns favored by 7.5 with a chance they can clinch a playoff spot here, right? Mm-hmm. With a win, with Joe Flacco going up against his former team, the Jets.
Vacation time for Al after this game.
That's it, huh?
Just on the jet, onto the beach.
It's been a good year for Al-ish. So he's getting cut from the playoffs. Al's not making the playoffs.
No.
But
it's not even on the bubble or in the hunt. It's just out. Eliminated.
Man, the Browns really put themselves in an amazing position. The number one defense and EPA per play, and then, of course, the most obvious mismatch here is the Browns' number one pass rush grade in the NFL per PFF against the Jets in their third worst pass blocking grade, with Trevor Siemian at the helm again because Zach Wilson's still in concussion protocol. It looks like as long as Flacco doesn't implode here, Sam, Cleveland should take care of business and go to the playoffs as a team that probably don't want to play in the playoffs the way their defense is playing.
And they feel like a team that's just kind of a glimpse for the Jets of what they could have had. Joe Flacco, who used to be a quarterback on the Jets, and now he's the guy that's steering the ship for the Browns, who are like, those two teams are in very similar situations in terms of being carried by the defense, no quarterback to speak of, and one of them is making it work and the other one isn't. Now there are differences, like the Browns' offensive line, even down 3 starting caliber offensive tackles, is still significantly better than the Jets. But it is, the comparisons between the two are difficult to avoid when you consider Flacco used to be the quarterback on the other team. He comes in off the couch and he's sort of rescued their season, whereas the Jets just can't find any type of viable quarterback play at this point. Flacco now has the same number of passing touchdowns as the New York Jets does this season. The New York Jets do. So for the Jets, for Saleh, for everybody involved there, it does feel very difficult to avoid looking across and being like, maybe we should have had him instead of Tim Boyle.
Yeah, a lot of hindsight, but there was foresight for a lot of people too. As soon as Aaron Rodgers went down, you going to make a move, Jets? You going to make a move? I don't know anybody that would have the foresight, though, to call Joe Flacco off the couch and expect him to have a game like he did last week in particular.
No.
Chucking it down the field, making big-time throws, throwing 10 touchdowns in just, 4 starts. Nobody expected that.
No, but there absolutely were people saying, Flacco might be better than the current options.
Yeah,
like maybe Flacco is a guy you should call up.
It's one of my favorite times of the year, though, Sam. One of my favorite, because I get to say things like this. The Cleveland Browns can clinch a playoff berth with a win or a tie. We could root for a tie here tonight if you're a Browns fan. Or, this weekend, a Pittsburgh loss or tie, a Buffalo loss, a Jacksonville loss or tie, or a Houston loss or tie, plus a Colts loss or tie. That's what you're rooting for this weekend, Browns fans, for just a playoff spot.
Okay.
But just take care of business tonight, and they're in. They're 7.5-point favorites. I think all year, man, I thought coming into the season, we thought the Browns had a good roster. They just needed to get good enough quarterback play. And ironically, I think Deshaun Watson was on his way there before he got hurt. But it's been Joe Flacco who's been there giving them good enough quarterback play. So again, as long as he doesn't implode, I think they win this game.
Which is possible, by the way. I mean, the Browns have the number one defense in the NFL. The Jets' defense is still very, very good and absolutely capable of causing problems for Joe Flacco. And, he's coming off, what was it, the best game he had since 2017, something crazy like that. He's coming off one of the best games he's had in years. So the narrative is riding high. It's all, hey, look at Joe Flacco. He's rescued the season. He's amazing. This could easily be a game where you get very bad Joe Flacco.
Well, it's the number 1 team in EPA per play against, the Browns, and then versus the number 3 team, the Jets. And again, the Jets happen to have the number 1 coverage grade in the NFL. We've been citing just how difficult they've made life for most opposing quarterbacks this year. That absolutely could happen. We could have one of those classic Thursday night 12-9 games.
Sure. I mean, Flacco is only a week removed from having a 4 turnover-worthy play game. If he does that against the Jets defense, number one, it'll be very difficult for the Browns to cover 6 points if that happens, but also the Jets are live in the game if that happens.
Well, let's make some picks here. 7.5, is that too much for the Browns at home here? You may have talked me out of it. The high is the last thing we saw was Flacco playing just unbelievable last week, but is that the norm? Probably not.
No.
Where are you going with this one?
All right, I hate it. I'm gonna go with the Jets keeping it within that giant sum of points.
All right, I'm gonna go with my first instinct. Despite you trying to talk me out of it, I'll take the Browns covering this. It's a big number for 7.5 here on Thursday Night Football. Before we get into the rest of the action, don't forget, as a parent, you've had to learn so many new skills to provide for your family: how to do copious amounts of laundry, meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Sam, I don't know let's do Saturday night's game. We'll get into the Discord game of the week, and then I think the most obvious game of the week, which is Dolphins-Ravens. But let's start with Saturday night. We've got one game this Saturday. NFL's really slacking. There's all sorts of open windows on the 30th, and they're not filling them.
Lazy.
Very lazy. But they're going to throw 10 games in the 1 p.m. slot. I don't have enough screens for that. It's going to be 4.
There's no
computer,
Monday game either?
iPad. What's that?
No Monday game either?
No Monday night game.
This is just laziness.
You're going to watch the college football playoff this New Year's Day.
Why? So is this a legal thing that they can't run it during the college thing, or they just decide not to?
No, it's just businesses make...
It's a cordial agreement.
It's not even an agreement. Like, businesses like to make decisions that are best for business.
Uh-huh.
So while it might on the surface be like, well, the NFL's doing the NCAA a solid, not, going head-to-head with Monday Night Football. But the NFL would not want to run Monday Night Football against the college football playoff for their own purposes because it doesn't make sense.
Wouldn't they, though?
No, they would not. So, yeah, there'll be they always do this, though. If the college football playoff happens to be on a Monday or whatever, they'll move things around. So Monday Night Football's on Saturday night this week. This is the Monday Night Football crew. This is going to be Troy and Joe. So that's Saturday night, 8:15, Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. The schedule makers, when they put this one on the board, they say, hey, these two teams could be good. This could be a nice way to finish the season. They nailed this one. Lions and Cowboys, both 11-4, both battling potentially for the number one overall seed. Sorry, the Cowboys are 10-5. Number one seeds in play for Detroit. We talked about that the other day. Dallas favored by 6 here, though, at home. And I haven't checked the update, but I did see somewhere this is the highest total in any game this year. So
any game this year?
Yeah. The man in Vegas is expecting a shootout here between Lions and Cowboys.
Wow. What is the total?
Low 50s, 52 or something like that. I haven't looked.
53.5.
Yeah, there you go.
With 90% of the cash coming in on the over.
On the
97%.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, Dallas last week, they were in Miami, in one of those heavyweight battle type of games, two of the best teams in the NFL, and it ends up 22-20 and slowed down after it looked like it might have been a shootout. What are we going to get here with Lions-Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those classic litmus test games for both teams, I think. I mean, they've had a few of them. Like Dallas, the narrative is going to be against them because they lost the game against Miami. But I think they showed that they can beat a team like that. They just didn't in that game. But if they do that again, like that's the problem, is they come close and don't get there. So to an extent, it's valid. Like they actually need to get over the hump against some of these teams because you're going to have to do it multiple times in the playoffs if you want to go on any kind of run. Detroit is another one of those teams that can cause them all kinds of problems. Now, with Detroit, it's a case of, can the good version of the team show up, or do they have one of those clunking games that they have every few weeks? That's their problem. But from a matchup point of view, like Dallas's offense should absolutely be able to have all kinds of success against Detroit's defense. And I think whether or not you get a passing version of the Lions offense or they just run the ball mercilessly, that should have success as well. So I think the over does make sense. A high-scoring game does make sense. There's just enough defense on either side to keep it interesting, but it should be a pretty high-octane shootout.
Yeah, this is the Lions' run game, especially with the narrative for the Cowboys in recent weeks. When they don't have Jonathan Hankins out there, Mozzie Smith has not been great holding the point. They've got these undersized linebackers, basically safeties playing in the box. And when they do put linebackers out there, Damon Clark last week, picking the wrong gap with the game on the line on 3rd and 2, leaving a wide open hole for the Dolphins to pick up 6 and basically clinch the game. Dallas's run defense, and it was just 2 weeks ago that they got gashed by the Buffalo Bills and James Cook on the ground. So the Cowboys' run defense has had the microscope on them in recent weeks, even though for the season it's not bad as a team. But in recent weeks, microscope on the Cowboys' run defense and the Lions' rushing attack with Jahmyr Gibbs, with David Montgomery, with Penei Sewell having one of the best seasons we've seen from a tackle, I think, in PFF history, especially from a run game perspective. The Lions have all the ingredients to exploit that. So, yeah, I think it's a great matchup, I think, on that side of the ball. The Lions and Cowboys, both teams have not been nearly as good on the road as they've been at home as far as putting points on the board. And, Dallas being at home, I think, is huge. That's why they're favored by 6. But I think Detroit has the ability to slow the game down, dominate on the ground, and then other side of the ball, Dak against this Detroit defense. The defense has been kind of hit or miss in Detroit, both in the secondary, and we've talked a lot about their inconsistency getting pressure outside of Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah,
I mean, it's generally been miss. Not so much hit or miss, just miss.
It's been like last week, they gave up a ton of yards.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
But then they got turnovers.
Nick Mullins had 7 turnover-worthy plays, but he also had like 11 yards per attempt and put up 400 on them.
Right.
Like that Lions defense has been getting fairly well gashed, and I don't imagine Dak Prescott is going to have the kind of implosion in terms of turnovers that Nick Mullins had. So, yeah, it feels like Detroit's defense is going to have its work cut out slowing down Dallas.
Yeah, that would be my concern, would be that side of the ball for the Lions. And like I said, it sounds like James Houston will have his practice window opened up, could be back for the playoffs. But the Lions have already clinched the division. I don't think that affects how they play here. I think if Detroit loses this game, they might be in rest the starters mode in Week 18, because I don't know if I assume if they lose, given what the Eagles and Niners have for their games, the Lions are probably locked in to the number 3 seed if they lose this game. But if they win, like I said, they've got this path, or they would need help, but they've got this path to having a bye.
Is Dan Campbell a rest the starters kind of guy?
That's a good question.
And that game is against the Vikings, so it would be resting the starters against a divisional rival.
It's a division rival.
Who you could put into the playoffs by doing that. So not just a team you probably don't like to begin with, but a team you would actively potentially be putting into the playoffs by resting your starters that you don't like. Yeah. So I don't know if Detroit rests them either way. One other element in this game that's pretty important, Tyron Smith, the Dallas left tackle, was hurt last week. It was a big problem. When he's not there, it's a huge loss at left tackle. We don't know if he's going to play yet. He didn't practice yesterday. It's up in the air at the moment. But if he's not there, I mean, look, Detroit doesn't necessarily have the pass rushers to take advantage of it, but it certainly makes it a lot easier if he's not available.
The line on the other side, I mentioned Penei Sewell, when he matches up with Micah Parsons, or that's going to be an incredible matchup, or any time, I mean, really, when Frank Ragnow's healthy, the Lions' offensive line is fantastic. Taylor Decker at left tackle. I mean, they've got one of the better lines in the NFL going up against this great Dallas pass rush, which isn't just Micah Parsons lining up against tackles. You know you're going to stunt. You're going to get him lined up over the guards. There is probably a weakness at left guard for the Lions. The Cowboys like to attack, so just watch for Micah Parsons. Watch where 11 is lined up all the time for Dallas. I bet he has 8 or 10 one-on-one matchups with Penei Sewell, but they'll move him around. I think that's going to be the difference in the game. I think it's Detroit's offense trying to keep up with Dallas's offense in this one. I think it's Detroit making sure that they run their game, get Gibbs his carries, get the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, create a couple of those deep shots to their speed receivers. I think Detroit has to keep up. I like the shootout as an expected game flow, I guess, because I think Dallas's offense is going to have a lot of success. So anything else to add here before we make our picks?
Nope.
Dallas by 6. Is that too much for the 11-4 Lions at the 10-5 Cowboys on Saturday night?
Yep, it is for me. I'm going with Detroit to at least keep it within 6, even if they don't win.
Yeah, I think that's where I want to go too. It's a lot of points for the Lions. The Lions are the team that, 3 or 4 times this year, they've just been randomly blown out.
Yeah.
And so I think, Vegas is basically predicting that, right? That Dallas is going to win by a touchdown and a lot of points are going to be scored in this game. But I'll take Detroit to keep it within the 6 here. The other game of the week, do you have a Discord game of the week?
No, there isn't one this week. The Discord is late with the selections.
Because I get the other game of the week. It's the Dolphins at the Ravens. They kept it in the 1 o'clock window. It's in Baltimore.
Controversial.
Yeah, it is a little bit because this week's schedule, like I said,
3-4 p.m. slot games. We couldn't have this in one of them.
Yeah, and the 4 p.m. slot games, looked better before the season because it was supposed to be Burrow versus Mahomes.
Right.
It's not.
No.
But Dolphins Ravens they're one of 10 games in the 1 o'clock window this week. So Ravens are favored by 3.5. The number 1 seed in the NFL on the line here, or in the AFC is on the line here. The Ravens have a 1-game lead over Miami. Miami has a serious test to end the season. It was Cowboys last week. They passed that test. They're in Baltimore this week. They're at home against Buffalo in Week 18. Can Miami prove they are the team to beat in the AFC?
Yeah, another big test. I mean, there's this constant stream of tests against this Miami offense that's been so incredible this season. Like every good/different defense that they come up against is like an intriguing matchup for them. So Baltimore obviously is the latest one. The Ravens have this all-time passing defense in terms of yards per attempt going up against this offense that's just absolutely cooking people, particularly over the middle. We said this heading into the 49ers game, but Kyle Hamilton is one of those players that's critical to how that defense performs, but also unusually important at defending this particular type of offense. Now, obviously, they're different personnel and slightly different ways of doing it, but effectively the same scheme, the same offense. With the 49ers, they're going to target Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, etc. With Miami, it's Tyreek Hill and it's Jalen Waddle. But either way, I think Hamilton is an important part of the matchup, and it seems unlikely he will play this time, though he's defied that previously the last time he hurt his knee. But if he's missing, how much of an impact does that make to this Baltimore pass defense that has been otherwise, historically good?
Yeah, man, I love Kyle Hamilton and what he's able to do. I posed a question on Twitter yesterday about force multipliers, right? Players that you know that they're doing a little bit more than whatever we can quantify from a production standpoint. I think Tyreek Hill on one side for Miami is one of the more obvious ones over the last couple of years, where his production's through the roof, but you feel what he does and the gravity that he has as a receiver. But some people in my mentions asked about, or mentioned Kyle Hamilton. I mean, he's only in year 2, but his ability to line up all over the place and do it all, right? Like play as a slot or a safety or in and around the line of scrimmage with range and just does so much for that defense. That would be a potentially massive loss. I think what you mentioned, though, the fact that the Ravens are going up against the same system 2 weeks in a row is just interesting in the schedule, right? I mean, they played the Niners, and now they're playing Mike McDaniel, who was just with the Niners 2 years ago. Same system, but as we've said before, it's run differently by their quarterbacks. It's run differently, right? It's quicker with Tua. Everything that Tua does is, half a second quicker, which is an eternity in the NFL. Everything's faster. Different types of playmakers, right? Miami's built on speed. The Niners have difficult to tackle tight end in Kittle. They have Deebo Samuel, who's a running back with the ball in his hands. It's a different style, but the same idea, right? They're trying to create space over the middle of the field. And, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah saying when they was watching the Ravens-Niners game, when we were watching it, the Ravens are built through the middle. And I've said this on the podcast a lot this year. When you're going up against Shanahan, in his scheme, they attack linebackers. They attack the middle of the field. And so teams that have two good linebackers have an opportunity to, slow down because of what they can do in the run game, what they can do in coverage. So the Ravens, we know where Tua wants to throw the ball. It's that 15 to 20-yard range behind the linebackers with a couple deep shots to Tyreek Hill. With Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, if and when Kyle Hamilton can see the field in this game, we'll see. Can those guys be the X factors that slow down the places where Miami really wants to throw the football?
Somebody needs to do a study on the average length of the injury report, specifically for Teron Armstead around week 16, 17. He's one of a number of Dolphins players on the injury report, naturally. He's the only one, though, on the injury report with knee, ankle, back. I remember last year it was the same thing. He was on the injury report with 4 separate injuries. Still playing, but the man is just, nothing works on the man.
Yeah.
Sometimes we play, sometimes he won't, but he's constantly dealing with 4 or 5 injuries.
I mean, the injury report for both teams here, I just mentioned Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. They're both technically questionable here. Hamilton was, they said, estimated as a non-participant yesterday. I'm assuming they didn't have, I don't know what they did for practice coming off the Monday night game.
Right.
Zay Flowers is on there as questionable with a calf. Mm-hmm. So it's that time of year, right, where a lot of the key players are going to be banged up. But Teron Armstead is a special case of banged up. But the Ravens have been so good.
Even just last week, he played, had the best grade of any offensive lineman on the team, didn't give up any pressures. It's amazing. When he's out there, he's one of the top 3 tackles in the NFL. It's just that 25% of the season, his body is going to betray him, and one of his 7 injuries is going to flare up enough that he can't be out there.
Ravens defense, number 2 in EPA per play allowed. So again, question-wise for the Dolphins, they haven't played. I mean, they played the Jets, who are one of the better defenses. They've had success against the Jets offensively, even without Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs are number 4 in EPA per play allowed. The Dolphins did not have a good game against the Chiefs. Scored 14 points on offense. Didn't really move the ball until the second half. The Cowboys are number 7 in EPA per play allowed. Dolphins had some success last week, as we mentioned. They scored the 22 points, and there was maybe more to be had there, and they win the game. So again, the Dolphins are a team that they're averaging over 30 a game. Not expecting them to put up 30 against the Ravens, but can they get to 20 to 24 and then slow down this Ravens offense? So it's going to be the other side of the ball maybe that determines things. Lamar Jackson, Ravens offense going against this Dolphins defense that has been cooking in recent weeks.
Yeah, and that side of the ball is really fun as well. I mean, that was the biggest takeaway actually for me for that Ravens 49ers game. Everyone was focusing on the meltdown from Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense, but to me the more important or more impressive element of it was Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, the 49ers couldn't stop them, couldn't slow them down. They didn't have answers to any time Lamar decided to make plays. So now you go, that's being tested against Vic Fangio's defense, which is that this defense, I think, has been hit or miss this season. It's had games where it's taken over, and even their pass rush, which is not amazing on paper, they've had games where they absolutely take over and dominate. So, what kind of answers does Vic Fangio have for Lamar Jackson?
Andrew Van Ginkel needs a lot of credit
for
the Dolphins. He's one of the highest graded edge defenders this year. I feel like we've mentioned him in a lot of the review shows because it's like, oh, he just came out of here with a
right, but not like an
6.
overall level. And he's got a 91.5 grade overall and a 91 pass rush grade and a 90 coverage grade, which for an edge rusher doesn't sound important until you understand that only Michael Hoyt has dropped into coverage on more snaps than Andrew Van Ginkel as an edge rusher in today's NFL. 140 over the season, which is a lot.
Yeah, he's got that interception, 4 other pass breakups. Van Ginkel's been very good. So I think, again, the interesting thing against the Ravens, it's not about, like, our pass rush grades usually focus on the wins and the losses, right? In defeating the blocker somewhat quickly. With the Ravens, though, the question is, okay, can you win? Yeah, you're going to win a few reps. What's going to happen there? Because we've seen Lamar Jackson pull out some of these spectacular scramble to throw type plays or scrambles like you did on Monday night against the 49ers. Can you get Lamar Jackson to the ground? That's going to be the key here. So I think it's always interesting how pass rushes handle the mobile quarterback. You have to teach your rushers, are you just trying to compress the pocket? Can you just let the walls cave in on him? Don't overcommit, don't get out of your rush lanes, and then play the escape routes, or are you actually trying to win quickly and create that negative play? As every you want to have an 8 to 10 yard sack, right? You want to create that loss, that negative play for the offense. I think it's always interesting how a defense is going to attack that. And I think when you watch Lamar on film the last couple weeks, it could be one of those games where you're saying, okay, we just don't want to let him do that. Keep him in the pocket, less worried about wins, more worried about playing contain.
If the trend of the season continues, every time there's an MVP favorite, he has a terrible game. We move on to somebody else. Lamar Jackson is now the MVP favorite after the Brock Purdy 49ers face-off. So if the season continues the way it has the rest of the year, this will be a bad Lamar game, and then we're back to square one with no idea who MVP is.
Maybe Tua puts himself in the conversation if he beats the team that's
or Tyreek back again.
Or Tyreek, I will say that. I mean, if Tyreek goes like 11 catches for 215, something like that, Tyreek could lock up the.
I honestly think if Tyreek Hill hadn't been hurt and missed time, he would be at least my current front runner for MVP. I think you can construct a Tyreek Hill case for MVP in this year of all years, where, as we said, like every time there's a front runner, that guy has a bad game, or the other front runner is like, we don't even know if he's the most valuable player on his own offense between a choice of like 3 or 4 players.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents on it very quickly. The problem with the MVP this year, like if you looked Brock Purdy and his stats, that was the argument. Look at his stats. No one's had his stats and not won MVP, or at least not been very much in the conversation. Mm-hmm. You could say the same thing for Tua and his stats. 8.6 yards per attempt. He's got 26 touchdowns, which that's not a monster number, but passer rating of 105.9. Those are MVP caliber numbers. Every player that has those numbers also has this system thing attached, not because we're being unfair to them. It's because we literally saw the Shanahan system have a ton of success with other quarterbacks, or you look at their playmakers and you're like, wow, they're doing a lot of the work. Or we knew what Tua was before Tyreek Hill got there.
Right.
And so so every single guy that's like in the MVP race has those caveats to it. And then you have a Lamar Jackson where the production isn't as good, and we're just assuming, well, he probably does more to elevate his team, which I buy into, but I don't know if it's enough to say, yeah, that dude's the MVP. So it's just, making everything more difficult in the MVP discussion. So it's a great football game. It's at 1 o'clock. That also affects the MVP voters. Who's watching at 1? It's not like it's Christmas night when everybody's watching.
Yeah, well, now they're being split. 10 games going on. This is, this needs to be an island game.
2 games I just wanted to cite really quickly, which might have nothing to do with this. Last year, week 2, Dolphins and Ravens. I think it was week 2, right? This is right when Mike McDaniel gets there. This is Tua and McDaniel. We're just starting to see them together, and this is the first time they looked great. They had a not so good week 1 against New England that year, and then a not so good first 3 quarters. It's in Baltimore, and the Dolphins make a miraculous fourth quarter comeback with 28 points against the Ravens. Ravens collapse. Dolphins win it. Tua goes 36 for 50 for 469 yards and 6 touchdowns. To that point, the 6 touchdowns represented a third of his career touchdowns passing touchdowns in like year 2+. This was the first time we ever saw this Dolphins offense with Mike McDaniel and Tua be explosive. The other one I wanted to cite was when Brian Flores was still there and they kept going 0 blitz against Lamar Jackson and beat Baltimore. So the Dolphins have had, whatever the history means, the Dolphins might have this game in the back of their head, at least the Tua McDaniel game, where they created big plays against this Ravens defense. It's a different Ravens defense, but I wonder how much that might be a factor for Miami's confidence going into this game in Baltimore, because they did that week 2 last year. Ravens favored by 3.5 here. Number 1 on everybody's power rankings right now. Where are you going in this one?
I'm going to go with the Ravens. I think they've been very impressive. Until I see Vic Fangio or the Dolphins defense slow that offense down, I think they're going to have success on that side of the ball. And I don't know if Miami's offense is going to have the same level of success against a very good pass attack.
Yeah,
or pass defense, rather.
I think I'm trusting, and again, the Lamar MVP case, you could say, is that the Ravens control the flow of the game. And so the defense is good, and Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense have so many answers with his running ability, his scrambling ability, the power, the speed and quickness that they have on that team. I think Baltimore has the ability to control the game, both sides of the ball, and then the pressure's on Miami to create some big plays. And even if they get a couple, play for play, I like Baltimore as well. We'll see what happens with Kyle Hamilton. That could be a big loss, but give me the Ravens. Give me the Ravens to cover the 3.5. I need to cite what's at stake, though, too. Where's this? Baltimore clinches the AFC North. They win but more importantly, the number 1 seed with the win. Okay, so the number 1 seed, Baltimore wins it. If Miami wins, they clinch the AFC East title with their own win or a Buffalo loss. And if Miami wins, they can have the number 1 seed if they just win their next 2 games, which was this game against Baltimore, of course, and then next week against Buffalo. So needed to make sure we get that in. Good? Mm-hmm. No more use for this game. All right, let's get to the rest of the 1 o'clocks. We'll roll through them here. Carolina Panthers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. A little battle of 1995 expansion teams here, Sam. Jags are favored by 6.5. It's a must-win game for the Jags, of course. Sitting there at 8-7. And tied atop the AFC South with 2 other teams record-wise. Jags with a 4-game losing streak. They were 8-3 just a few weeks ago. Trevor Lawrence banged up with the Teron Armstead of injuries here. He's got more injuries than Teron Armstead. We'll just say that, Trevor Lawrence. But it really looks like his shoulder could keep him from going. But, man, every time we're not expecting Lawrence to play, he does play. Like, he came back against the Saints this year, too. How many injuries has he had? That feels like an eternity ago, but he had like a knee that looked terrible, and he came back for a Thursday night game this year. Lawrence is pretty durable, but I don't know if he can go in this one.
Well, I mean, durable would be not getting injured in the first place, I would think, as opposed to somehow being able to battle through
you're right.
injuries.
This is like Ben Roethlisberger durable.
Yeah.
Right? You get hurt a lot, but you tough it out or you recover quicker.
But this feels like, I mean, is this a line that says Lawrence is playing? Are they 7-point favorites with Beathard at quarterback?
I mean, it is the Panthers, and it is in
I mean, I know that, but Beathard. No?
Yeah, I understand.
Beathard? 7-point favorite?
I understand.
Anywhere? Ever?
And then Bryce Young playing better. Now, I don't...
Against the Packers.
Even the week before, he played well in the rain against Atlanta.
Ish.
The history. So if Bryce Young goes on a little run, you're a Bryce Young fan coming in. I was a Bryce Young fan coming in. We would be. We know the history here. If like Bryce Young has 2 more good games to finish the season, and you say, well, then the last 4 games, like there's a chance Bryce Young in the last 4 games is like a top 10 quarterback. I mean, if you just look at the last 4,
it would at least give you a glimmer of hope. I mean, before the Atlanta game, there was nothing. Literally no reason for hope. The only reason for hope for Bryce Young before that game was, hey, there have been other quarterbacks that have looked like the worst quarterback in the NFL as a rookie and then not been terrible. They've gone on to do good things later in their career. There's nothing, like you can't, the argument was literally not constructed surrounding anything you've seen from Bryce Young. It was like, hey, other guys have also been ass and been okay at the end of it all. at least now you would be able to construct an argument if you were so inclined to say, we saw some things from Bryce Young late in the year. You know, that touchdown against Green Bay where he scrambles out of the pocket and finds a guy in the back of the end zone. That looked like Alabama Bryce Young. And other quarterbacks have been bad and then turned it around. You know, you would have more than one thing to put in your argument. So, I mean, from that point of view, it's good to at least have some level of optimism on something heading into the end of the year.
All I was going to say, though, I mean, I agree. Like, you want to see like things on tape that are positive heading into 2024. I always warn of the rookie season Sam Darnold had in 2018, where he was one of our highest graded QBs in the last 4 games. And it's an easy narrative that rookie figured it out in the last 4, you know, sunshine and rainbows heading into the next season. Mm-hmm. I would just worry about that. But I'm still going to statistical malpractice, I believe it was called. Someone called me out for recently. I'm going to do it. Right. Over the last 2 weeks, Sam.
Yeah.
Bryce Young's QB6 per PFF grades.
The last 2 weeks.
Over the last 2 weeks. You know who's 31st?
No.
Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I was going to get there. Damn it.
I mean, it's Mitchell Trubisky and Patrick Mahomes sitting there at 30 and 31 over the last couple of weeks. So clearly Bryce Young is the guy. Anyway, don't use those numbers. That doesn't mean anything.
No.
But yeah, if you still want to see some kind of positives for Bryce Young here going forward. Mm-hmm. But I think that's, the Panthers have the Jags and then they have the Bucs, two playoff teams, playoff caliber teams over these last couple of weeks. It is a chance for Bryce Young to finish the season strong, or he just had a good game against the Packers like everyone else has.
Yes. I mean, I think that's probably the single most important element in this upturn. But as I say, I think it's good for him and for Panthers fans to see some kind of signs of life at the end of the season. Even if the whole year has been ugly, it's been a write-off, it's been pretty much a disaster for Bryce Young, at least the sign that it hasn't, ended him, is an important thing to see. And, I think the Jacksonville defense, it's not Green Bay. It's not a defense you're like, of course he's going to have a good game. But it's one that you could, have a solid performance against. So, yeah, I mean, that I think is a pretty interesting element to watch is can Bryce Young still have another good game back to back, and put it together against a better defense, but not exactly an amazing one.
Yeah, I don't have the splits in front of me, the danger of using splits again, but the Jaguars defense early in the year was playing much better than they have been recently. They just got smoked by Tampa Bay. They allowed Jake Browning to complete 90% of his passes on Monday Night Football. The Jags defense has really fallen off. And my concern with C.J. Beathard, because the report by Mike DeRocco of ESPN is Trevor Lawrence probably not going to throw much this week. Again, he's tough. Is he just going to game time decision, just, do what you got to do to get out there and play? Maybe. But even then, Lawrence hasn't played well in recent weeks. And if it's Beathard, we mentioned on the show last week, they're the team, the Jags, that don't have a lot of help. Screen game's not great. The run game's not great. The pass blocking's not great. The receivers haven't caught the ball all that well. Nothing's really good around the quarterback in Jacksonville this year. And the offenses look good when the quarterback has played at a high end, at a high level. And so you're expecting that from C.J. Beathard. And then the Jags defense, again, early in the year, they were contesting everything, right? It was like they were in the hip pocket of receivers, and that just hasn't been the case in recent weeks. Josh Allen, now that's the other thing. The Carolina offensive line usually invites big pass rushing performances. You need Josh Allen and you need Trayvon Walker, again, to finally do something.
The other thing is whether Trevor Lawrence is actually able to go or not. He's been playing pretty badly in the last few weeks while he's been playing through the injuries. He has 12 turnover-worthy plays in the last 4 games. So he's averaging 3 a game while he's battling through this list of injuries. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is a better option than C.J. Beathard if it's an option. But this version of Trevor Lawrence, he's already dealing with a Teron Armstead list of injuries, and they add one more to it. Hey, go out there and throw through the shoulder injury. I mean, if you get another game like he had against Tampa Bay, where he had a 45 grade and put the ball in harm's way multiple times, then it probably doesn't matter whether he's playing or not.
So the Panthers the last 2 weeks, right? They pulled the upset against the Falcons in the rain, almost pulled the upset against the Packers last week. Both games were at home. They'll be on the road here, but if you're just looking at how teams are trending, the Panthers have a little bit of hope in life the last couple weeks. The Jags are going the opposite direction. How much does that matter? So let's make our picks. Jags by 6.5 against the Panthers.
Oh, I can't believe I'm doing it, but Panthers.
I'm doing the same thing. Taking Carolina. Battle of the expansion teams from 1995. Am I focused too much on the on recency bias here?
Probably.
Almost certainly. All right, before we get to the rest of the games, got to tell you about our Prize Picks lineup for this week. So all these games in the 1 o'clock window. We got Rachaad White going more than 69.5 rushing yards for the Bucs. DeAndre Hopkins going more than 54.5 receiving yards for the Titans. And Matthew Stafford of the Rams going more than 255.5 passing yards. That's how Prize Picks works. Each player has their projection, and you're just picking more or less. And we're always positive here on the PFF NFL podcast. We're rooting for more. Rachaad White rushing yards, DeAndre Hopkins receiving yards, Matthew Stafford passing yards. You guys can do the same over at Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more, you pick less. It's that easy. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than a 2 to 6 player stat projection and then watch the winnings roll in. You could play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You could do that in the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community every single week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so the entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So you heard our lineup. We're ready to go. You can play for Thursday night. You can play for this weekend. Whatever you want to do. It's over at prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use the code PFFNFL, and you get a first deposit match up to $100. It's a great deal over at prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, man, other 1 o'clock games. Big one here. New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks favored by 2.5 against the Saints. Speaking of teams that are trending in certain directions, the Bucks really finding their way the last couple weeks. Impressive offensive performances against the Packers, but also against the Jags last week. Baker Mayfield, if you want to use the 2-week splits, Baker Mayfield's QB2 the last couple weeks because I'm still on that page. 6 touchdowns, no picks, over 10 yards per attempt, passer rating of 141 over these last couple weeks because he had that perfect passer rating, against Green Bay. But the Bucs offense seems to be finding their way. Defense has been tough, I think, for most of the season anyway. Going up against the Saints. And the X factor here is the Saints in Tampa Bay the last couple of years, and the Brady era in particular, always played well in Tampa. You got Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore storyline.
That's always fun.
Yeah, always. Can Baker in the Bucs? Look, the Bucs beat the Saints in Tampa Bay last year. Remember Brady had all those, they would just sleepwalk for three quarters and then make this ridiculous comeback. It was something like 16-3 with 7 minutes left or whatever last year, 5 minutes left, and the Bucs won. So the Bucs kind of got the monkey off their back, beating New Orleans in Tampa Bay, but it's been a thing these last couple of years.
And they won handily the first game earlier.
And in the first game in the Dome, the Bucs took it to them. So it could be a whole different thing. But a 3-point game. Vegas is expecting, a hard-fought division battle here.
Yeah, this is it for the Saints, right? This was the team. This was where they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be the team, albeit with fairly pathetic control over the division, but the team that was going to win this division with Derek Carr being just good enough to take you to the postseason and probably not much further. And now it's not working out. Tampa Bay has seized control of this division with a couple of wins against the division, Carolina and Atlanta, and then those games against Green Bay and Jacksonville. They're on a 4-game win streak now, which has propelled them to that 8-7 record, which in the NFC South makes you some kind of god as a team. So it's the team that they were supposed to be versus the team that they actually are. And if the Saints want anything out of this year, they have to show up and have their biggest performance of the year against this Tampa Bay team, which is surging, but against some pretty weak opposition.
Is Lattimore even available? He's out, isn't he?
Come on. You don't get to see Mike Evans versus Lattimore?
No, he's on IR.
Boo.
As of 2 days ago. He's been on IR, but he's not. Dennis Allen is non-committal about Lattimore. And it seems like he won't return to practice this week, which is always sad.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is cooking. That would really test things. Evans has had some success against Lattimore. Like, he'll have a few catches.
Yeah,
in that first matchup, remember, it was like they were going after it. Evans took it to Lattimore.
They always do. I mean, what makes that matchup fun is that those guys just get hyper physical and go to war. Obviously Lattimore is the best version of that because we've seen it year after year after year. But all those Saints corners play the same kind of way. I mean, even without Lattimore, how they defend Mike Evans is something to watch in this game because all of the Saints corners get physical. Paulson Adebo, Isaac Yiadom, like all of the guys they have get in your face, cause problems, get physical, turn it into a fight. And as long as you have an officiating crew that's willing to work with you, that becomes fun.
So the Bucs have a chance. They can clinch the NFC South with a win and an Atlanta loss. But if they win this, the path, it goes through Tampa Bay either way. Their last 2 weeks, winning the last 2 weeks has been huge for the Bucs to put them in this position. For the Saints to win the South, they have to win this game. Then they have to beat Atlanta. I think it's Atlanta in Week 18. And then might still need the Bucs to lose to the Panthers next week as well. So the Saints would need a lot of help, but it all starts here. If the Saints can pull the upset in Tampa Bay, 2.5-point underdogs. Again, Saints offensive line has had issues, and they've just been so inconsistent offensively with Derek Carr under center. Every time the Saints show signs of life, they seem to just lay an egg and come back down to earth. So season's on the line. Can they do anything here? Last time we saw them really struggled against the Rams on Thursday Night Football, tried to make a little bit of a comeback. Again, why was I so optimistic about the Saints? It was a bad schedule and playmakers. All season I was like, hey, Derek Carr's not great. He's not bad. He's mid-tier quarterback with dudes who get open down the field. That should create some explosive offense. Like, the raw stats are kind of there for Carr, but there's just something missing all season for the Saints team. So
Tampa Bay's defense has been better in recent weeks as well. Now, again, you look at the competition, you're like, how much of that is who they were playing versus actually the Bucs defense is on an upturn. But the Bucs defense should have been better than it has been for a lot of the season. And I think Todd Bowles has taken a lot of criticism because it hasn't been. This is another game where, like, if you want that to continue, that the defense needs to show up and all its best players fire and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Like I said, Tampa's offense is they're playing better overall. They're still only averaging 18 points a game at home this year, Tampa Bay. But recent trends, if they matter, they're playing well, averaging 31 points per game over the last 3 weeks, the Bucs. So 2.5-point favorites, Tampa Bay. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going with the Bucs.
I am too. Now, are you going to come back on the Baker bandwagon?
No.
Why?
Why? I said I wouldn't.
He's playing well.
Said I'm out.
He's playing well.
He's playing pretty well. I'm still out. I'm not buying back. I'm not getting sucked back into the Baker Mayfield thing. No. I've learned. It's over.
This is the challenge. I did so many radio hits probably 2.5 years ago, whatever the time period was, when Baker they didn't pick up his fifth-year option in Cleveland and let him go. Mm-hmm. And it was like Seattle needed a quarterback and Pittsburgh. And I go on all these radio hits, and I'm like, of course you should take a flyer on Baker Mayfield. Of course you should.
Yeah.
And then it looked like an idiot, right? Because the Panthers did, and he goes to the Rams, and he's just all over the place. And the flyer didn't work. And the Bucs really just took a simple flyer on Baker Mayfield.
They didn't really take a flyer. Like he's getting paid for. Sam Darnold is getting paid more money this year than Baker Mayfield.
You're right. It wasn't even a flyer. It was really just like the end of musical chairs.
It was just like, we're not going to bother investing in a quarterback this year.
Yeah, we know that we're in a cap situation. He's our bridge quarterback. He's a starting caliber quarterback, and here they are on the verge of making the playoffs. So I was finally right 2.5 years later after 3 other stops or whatever it was. But yeah, it's been an impressive year for Mayfield. They're already talking about what it looks like to bring him back, if it's a Geno Smith-like, mid-level contract. But impressive last few weeks here for Baker and the Bucs.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll take the Bucs to cover though. Patriots at the Bills. Bills favored by 13 here. Bills, of course, they have to win out for anything good to happen. They could still make the playoffs, I think, with a loss, but they would need a lot of help. So 13-point favorites here at home. Bailey Zappi in the Patriots. I'm not doing it. Bailey Zappi and the Patriots playing better in recent weeks. Huh? Buffalo can clinch a playoff berth with 14. There are 14 different scenarios in which Buffalo can clinch a playoff berth.
And you're not doing it as reading them out, correct?
Scenarios 6 through 14 involve a Buffalo tie.
You're right. Yeah, we don't need to read those.
No, we don't.
I was just checking. Late December, Patriots Bills in New York.
Yeah, what's the weather?
In Buffalo. I was like, that feels like a weather game. It's not, though. 36 degrees and broken clouds.
Don't be disappointed now because it's only Thursday. In Buffalo, lake effect. It could any time it could be like 50-mile-an-hour winds and snow.
Still, the coldest I've ever been in my life was a December the 27th game in Buffalo. This game, way back when my parents lived in upstate New York, we went to the Bills Patriots. It was the game that was so windy that I was watching Randy Moss and Tom Brady warming up, before the game, and they couldn't stand 10 yards apart and throw the ball to each other. The ball wouldn't make it. This was before they moved the extra point back. Somebody almost missed an extra point short. Like it went up and hit a wall of wind and then just stopped going forward and dropped, and it just dropped over the line. They had those old aluminium bleachers. And you go up there and you think, well, metal things warm up once you sit on them for a while, right? But when they run the length of the stadium, they don't. They just suck the heat out of 60,000 people or however many people are there. So you go in and they're selling seat cushions. You're like, I'm not paying, $20 for a seat cushion. I'll be fine. At halftime, you're like, give me 8 of them. I'd take all the seat cushions that are available. Coldest I have ever been was that game. But this game's going to be 36 and broken clouds.
You can only just hope for some wind. You also have the game a couple years ago where it was 60-mile-an-hour winds or whatever.
Yeah.
Mac Jones threw 3 passes, one until the late fourth quarter. That was one of the most ridiculous games to watch of all time. Buffalo's had a lot of success against New England at home. Remember, one of the Patriots' 4 wins, though, was a fourth quarter comeback by Mac Jones in New England against the Bills. Right? Why are the Bills sitting here with 14 scenarios to make the playoffs in Week 16 rather than just one? Because they lost games like they did earlier in the year to New England. So I think we all agree Buffalo is hashtag the team you don't want to play come playoff time, right? The team that's going to have a 6 or 7 seed potentially and, cause some damage. Or there is a path to the division if Buffalo wins out and Miami loses out. But the Bills just have to take care of business here against New England.
Yeah, just get over the line. I mean, this is the thing. In the last couple of weeks, they've had that game against Dallas where it looked like the number 1 seed type Buffalo Bills. And you're like, oh, that's a team that they could be as good as any team in the NFL if they play like that. And then the next game is against the Chargers with Easton Stick, and they barely get over the line in that game. And you're like, okay, they're both wins. They count the same. It doesn't really matter, but one of those teams is scary and the other one isn't. Now, for the purposes of just making the postseason, it doesn't matter. Just get the W and move on. And that's what this game's all about. It doesn't matter if they win by 3 scores. They clear the 13.5-point spread. They dominate. They walk away into the distance. Or if they somehow sneak it with a last-second field goal and they win by 1. Just get the win and move on. But it does sort of determine what you think about this team moving forward. Obviously they're a better team because they have both sides of the ball are functional, whereas New England, generally, it's only been 1 this season.
Well, there's a lot of buzz around Bailey Zappi in New England.
Why?
Because he's been better than Mac Jones.
For a week.
Yeah. They're averaging 16 points per game with Bailey Zappi as starter.
Uh-huh.
But you would think it's better.
Yeah.
It was impressive. He played a great
was really
game against
good,
Denver.
But that was it. Game. That was the first sign of life.
I mean, he's had some good plays the last couple weeks. He was good early on against Kansas City. He's had some flashes even before the Christmas Eve thing, but he would just, had bad turnovers as well. He almost blew the Pittsburgh game and had a turnover in his own territory against Kansas City to set them up. It's been flashes, but still just didn't play a complete game until Christmas Eve against Denver.
Right. Bailey Zappi's PFF grades by start: 63.6, 69.7, 48.9, and then this 88.9 against Denver. Like, it's basically been one game. And now we're getting excited by Bailey Zappi?
It's all relative, Sam. It's all relative. All right, that's it for this game. Let's make a pick. Buffalo by 13 here.
Some in-depth analysis.
What else to say here? Josh Allen, by the way, has thrown 36 passes the last 2 weeks. Just one quick aside. I think forget it, the MVP stuff. It's just interesting to me that Allen is now like a hot name in the MVP race, mostly because other guys have failed. And it's coincided with 2 weeks where he's thrown 36 passes, including 2 weeks ago.
And one.
He called himself just like the guy that did nothing on the school project and got an A because James Cook carried the offense. And I'm not even saying Allen's played poorly or anything. It's just interesting to me. Allen I know he's got 5 touchdowns the last couple weeks, and he's had rushing touchdowns in the whole thing. But I do think that is good in the long run for Buffalo, finding other ways to win. I think the only chance Buffalo loses this is if James Cook keeps fumbling and they turn the ball over. Josh Allen does his turnover implosion. But 13 is a lot of points.
It is.
Against the Patriots team playing a little feistier in recent weeks.
Yeah, I just don't have enough faith in Buffalo to buy into 2 touchdowns as a spread. So I'm going to go with the Patriots.
I wanted to take the Patriots. I'm thinking about the Kansas City game a couple weeks ago, this Kansas City offense where the sky's falling. They beat New England by 10, and they dropped touchdowns. Like, it could have easily been 3 scores.
Yeah.
So give me Buffalo.
The Bills have been the same.
I swear this is my 20th straight time I've taken the Bills with a 10-point spread, and it has not gone well in recent weeks.
No.
Los Angeles Rams at the New York Giants. Rams favored by 5.5 going to New York here. We got Tyrod Taylor. He is getting the start for the Giants.
Yep. The Cutlets era is over. Probably.
Most likely.
Tyrod has been the best quarterback for that Giants team this season. So from that point of view, I think it's interesting to watch. I also am a unashamed Tyrod Taylor stan. Me and Mina. The Tyrod Taylor fan club. It might be just the 2 of us at this point. But
we should do a whole podcast on
but the 2 of us
Tyrod love.
Are the Tyrod Taylor fan club. So I'm all for seeing Tyrod Taylor lead a game at home against the Los Angeles Rams, a playoff team.
Yeah. The MVP stuff.
Tyrod?
Stafford.
No, I see.
Not enough people talking about Matthew
Well, it's
Stafford.
because he had the first half of the year, there were no stats.
The stats were bad.
Yeah.
But he's
So
been
everyone's
playing
like,
well.
oh, look, he's on a tear right now. It's like he's been playing this way the whole year. It's just for some reason for the first half of the year, that resulted in 8 passing touchdowns.
Remember how I used to describe Stafford as the guy 4 or 5 times a year looks like the best quarterback in the NFL. He's got 4 games above 90 this year. Week 1 against Seattle, week 6 against Arizona, and the last 2 weeks against Washington and New Orleans. Now, you might say, okay, those are all against not so great defenses. But New Orleans, that was an impressive game, that Thursday night game. He is cooking right now. And you got all these on-off splits. When he has his, second-year, fifth-round running back, Kyron Williams, and he's got Puka and Cooper Kupp on the field, is the best offense in the league for whatever reason. But so if you were making the MVP case for Stafford, Kyron Williams is playing great. But you would say, well, Stafford's just dragging 5th-round running back Kyron Williams, 5th-round rookie Puka Nacua, 1 leg of Cooper Kupp. He's just dragging this team, right? They had 28 players at minicamp in May because they were so young. They didn't have anybody on the roster. It was Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, and a whole 97 rookies on this team, and Stafford's dragging them to the playoffs to the point where apparently you said this is the team you don't want to play come playoff time. Yeah. I didn't know you did one of those.
No, I generally. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, somebody said that about the Rams, and I was like, I think that's crazy. I think most teams would want to play the Rams in the playoffs. They're not that good. But actually, over the last couple of weeks, I've come around on that. And I think as long as they have the components to be scary, because you have Matthew Stafford playing at this incredible level, when Cooper Kupp, we know what he can do. Obviously, we've seen it, 2,000 type of yards, over the year. And then, Puka Nacua, okay, he's a rookie, but obviously, we've seen since day one he can make a huge impact. I think we've also seen at this point it's not going to go away. It wasn't just this figure. He's not, rookie Travis Fulgham. It wasn't just a weird run of games where Puka Nacua was getting fed the ball because because Cooper Kupp was hurt, and now that he's back, like, it's going to be a thing. Cooper Kupp, or Puka Nacua rather, is absolutely for real. He's making big plays. He's got good hands. He's got run after the catch ability. He's strong. He runs good routes. Like, he's good. And then the Kyron Williams thing looks legit as well. And that offensive line, okay, it's not a vintage Rams offensive line. It's not what it was when it was at its best. But it's shown now to be good enough. So that offense can scare anybody. And then the defense might be the weaker element of the team, but it still brings Aaron Donald to the table. And even if that's all it brings, and it isn't quite, but every single team that has to play the Rams cannot go into a game without spending the week figuring out how Aaron Donald is not going to be a factor in this game. You might look at him and think, he's washed at this point. He's not the same guy. Look at the sack numbers. He still has 16, I think, more pressures this year than any other interior defensive lineman. And he's still one of the most double-teamed players in the NFL. He gets more attention, or as much attention, as any defensive lineman in the league. And he's still out there wrecking shop. So if you don't do that, like if you go, Aaron Donald's washed, forget about it, we just run our game plan, he will ruin you. So every single game they play that week in the playoffs has got to be spent dealing with Aaron Donald. That's important.
In addition to the Giants, anytime they face any defensive tackle, the defensive tackle can ruin their game.
Well, that's because the Giants have a terrible offensive line. Yeah.
I expect Donald to wreak havoc here, for sure. It is a battle of the two quarterbacks with the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL.
Stafford and Tyrod.
Given sample sizes. Tyrod is classic, doesn't put the ball in harm's way, but probably he doesn't throw turnover-worthy plays, but he does get sacked a lot generally. His sack total this year, though, behind that Giants offensive line, given what Tommy DeVito and Daniel Jones have done, it's like a minor miracle that Tyrod has done. So when you say he's played the best, like, he has done a good job taking care of the ball, avoiding negative plays, especially relative to the two other QBs.
But the other thing that's been different about Tyrod this year, now look, it's crazy small sample size. The guy's got 135 dropbacks this season. So, but remember right at the start of his Buffalo career, it seemed like every game when he was starting, every game he was dropping in like one absolutely insane deep bomb or cover two hole shot, or just really, really impressive intermediate to deep, big time type of throw, right? And then those kind of disappeared over the course of his starting career. He was always pretty good in terms of not putting the ball in harm's way, but he stopped making those big plays. And that took a lot away from the ceiling of what he could be as a quarterback. And that's why, there was the clamoring for a new guy, and Josh Allen comes in, and obviously Josh Allen has a much higher ceiling and just is a better quarterback. But those big-time throws have come back this year for Tyrod in limited starts. Like, he's actually had quite a few of those big plays. We saw last week he comes in, he drops a bomb to Darius Slayton. Like, those things have come back to his game. So not only has he still got that, he's not putting the ball in harm's way, whereas the other quarterbacks are. He's also, even if it's not, even if it's not as regularly as Josh Allen or even Matthew Stafford, he has rediscovered that touch of, what the hell, let's take a shot and hit it. And if that stays, like if that's a thing that's going to be there if he starts games, that makes him a pretty good quarterback. Like, he's still working in a bad situation, and there is still a ceiling to how good he can be. He's not going to be an all-pro or anything. But that's a pretty good group of ingredients of athletic playmaker who can scramble, won't put the ball in harm's way, and every now and again he's going to hit a bomb that will flip the field and give you a really good, a chunk play that changes the dynamic of the whole game. Those three things together are a pretty potent group of ingredients.
Just take it to Mina. You guys can talk Tyrod the whole time.
You're just not interested, huh?
No, I am. No, you're right. It's good. It's good stuff. I think the Giants are going to have trouble up front. No, it is interesting to see if Tyrod can elevate everything else around the Giants. They're looking for signs of hope to finish the season here. Some of the young guys playing well. You need John Michael Schmitz to play better at center. You need some of those young guys to play better.
Oh, man, John Michael Schmitz and Aaron Donald is going to be rough.
Who do the Rams have in Week 18? They've got the 49ers. So they go to San Francisco.
So they need this win.
Yeah. and they're the team that usually loses to San Francisco on the 40, in Shanahan. But their Rams are tough now, man. They're a legit team. The reason why, they're 8-7, but for whatever reason, like Kyron Williams is really fantastic at running back.
Yeah,
like he has been fantastic. The healthy Rams team is really dangerous, man. So your statement is true. I expect them to win and to cover, even in New York. Rams clinch a playoff berth if they win and Seattle loses, or if the Rams win and Sunday Night Football, Packers-Vikings is a tie.
A tie.
Yeah. So they're sitting there watching Sunday Night Football, rooting for a tie, potentially.
Just like everybody else.
Anyway, I don't think we emphasize this enough. Matthew Stafford has the lowest turnover-worthy play rate of his career by a mile.
He's usually not particularly good at that.
No.
It's not a Stafford trait over his career.
He has, again, when Dak was sitting there with by far the highest grade of his career, I kind of said, hey, that's not really in line with the rest of his career.
Right.
That could come back down to earth. I actually forgot that I had said that until he's come back down to earth the last couple weeks. So on one hand, Stafford could be due a 5 turnover-worthy play game at any given point. But this is impressive how well he's taking care of the ball. He's got 9 turnover-worthy plays and 9 interceptions, meaning, there's probably some unlucky interceptions in there. It's been an excellent season for Stafford, especially given all of the circumstances with the Rams.
Yeah, and I think the Rams' offensive line deserves quite a bit of credit as well. That is a group that on paper looked awful and at the beginning of the year was awful, and they've come together over the course of the season with players that you would not say, like if you were listing the starting 5, you would be like, that's a problem. That's going to be an issue. Like Alaric Jackson has been, left tackle for most of the year. You'd be like, there's no way. That can't work. Matthew Stafford back there, no. And it has. It's worked pretty well. Like Coleman Shelton. Like they've been getting by with a bunch of guys that don't look like it should be functioning, but it has been.
That's the MVP case, basically. But I'm just saying, like that's what's been made the Rams so fun is that like it on paper shouldn't work, and they've turned that into a very good offense, a good enough defense, and they could be dangerous. I think the Rams stay hot and cover this. What do you think?
Yeah,
5.5.
Same
at New York. All right, let's go Falcons Bears. You have 2 minutes on this one. we got to do this.
It's the
Bears favored by 3 in Chicago.
It's the Justin Fields audition. The Falcons, the one team that makes sense for him to still be a starting quarterback next year. Now he gets to show them. Here's what you could have.
It's going to be an interesting offseason, of course. Guys like Justin Fields, could be on the market at quarterback. We know Russell Wilson has now been benched and could be.
There was a report out there that the Bears can still get a first-round pick back for Justin Fields. Like the takes on him are all over the place. It's really fascinating, actually. Like the Rorschach test that Justin Fields is to people. Like you're gonna see all kinds of different things from him.
There is this element where, like, going back to the Giants quickly, it is fair to say, like, if you looked at Daniel Jones 5 years as a starter, you could never look back and be like, well, at least he had a good supporting cast these 2 or 3 years. Like, there's literally zero.
Yeah, he's never had the platform for success.
Yeah. And you could, if you're making the Fields case, he has DJ Moore this year, but you would never look back and say, like, the offensive line's been pretty good the last couple of years, despite the narrative, but it's not great. Never had a great group of playmakers. Like, if you want to make the Fields case, you would probably do it through that lens, right? Explosive playmaker who's never had an above-average situation. It's been average at best, and it's been below average for most of the time. That's where you're landing there. I'd still like to see more from Fields over these last couple of weeks. I don't think they get a first-rounder for him. There's all these other first-round quarterbacks who might not be as dynamic as Fields, but all these other first-round fringe caliber quarterbacks who are going to be on first-year contracts, like first contracts, right? He's got to get paid within 2 years here.
If they can, by the way, they should make that deal happen immediately. Like,
oh my gosh! I mean,
instantly.
If the Bears could have their pick of Drake May and Caleb Williams,
get a first-round pick back,
and then
getting rid of the guy you're getting rid of, like
2 other picks,
couldn't be better than that.
If they could get their quarterback of choice at the top, plus another top 7 or 8 pick, plus another first rounder, wherever, even if it's 32.
Right. Take it.
Not that the Super Bowl team's going to trade for Fields, but you absolutely take that. I don't see it happening. Falcons still have technically the Bears are still alive in the playoff picture. I don't know how, but I know we didn't talk about them yesterday as eliminated, so technically
that's true. Yeah.
Things can happen. The Falcons do have a path to win. I think every NFC South team has to lose somehow, even if they're playing each other.
Right.
And the Falcons have to win out. I think if the
they're only
Saints,
a game back.
they're rooting for the Saints. Like, if the Bucs lose both, and the Falcons win this week and then beat the Saints next week.
Yeah, they're only a game back, but they don't have tiebreakers, so they need it both. They need 2 games swinging the other way.
They're rooting for the Saints this week, and they need the Bucs to lose to the Panthers next week while winning these next 2 games.
Yes.
And again, the Falcons, they're a tough one to peg because I've been so impressed. I feel like I've said way more positive things about the Falcons than negative this year because I've loved how their free agents have played. I love how their defense has played. Number 1 run defense grade in the NFL this year. Love their pass catchers and their running backs. It really comes down to like Desmond Ritter's had some of the most ridiculous turnovers.
Yeah.
And Taylor Heineke played a relatively clean game last week, and they looked like a good team.
That's the thing. The standard of quarterbacking play for them is so low, and yet they still fail to meet it. All they need to do is for the quarterback to just get out of the way and not lose the game for them, and they do a good job. Taylor Heineke had that game. No turnovers last week against the Colts, and they win comfortably because they lent on their playmakers. Bijan Robinson had a really good game. Tyler Algier. They lent on their playmakers, and they won. Like, if your quarterback doesn't screw it up, they win. But whether it's been Heineke or Ritter this season, almost every single game, the quarterback has found a way to cause problems.
Yeah. That's all I got on this game. No, I think Chicago wants to run the ball. They've had some success in recent weeks. Atlanta, like I said earlier, best run defense grade in the NFL this year. They've done a great job. Like last week against the Colts, when Atlanta wants to crack down against the run, they add extra men to the box, and they're sound up front.
Their defense against Fields will be interesting. Like, it doesn't sound like Gardner Minshew is a good sort of preparation for Justin Fields, but we've said all year they've been running kind of the Anthony Richardson playbook with Minshew. You know, they run a lot of similar things to what Chicago does in terms of the run game and involving the quarterback and keeping him in there in terms of an extra man that you need to account for in the run game. So in a weird way, I think playing the Colts was actually pretty good preparation for Justin Fields. Now, obviously, it changes having Minshew versus Fields. I mean, you're talking about like half a second in the 40 time. It's different. So it's a different dynamic there with that quarterback. But at least like the bare bones, the concepts are similar, and they've already dealt with that a week ago.
Just to wrap this up, too, the reason why there are some people that are still extremely high on Fields is last week he ran for 97 yards. And that can happen at any given time. Designed run game and scrambles. I mean, I still believe that, right? Like, I still believe that there's more in Fields, right? Because I've seen him throw the ball accurately before, more accurately than he's been the last couple of years. He does have a pretty good deep ball, and he has that big playability. I think I don't know what that right environment is, but the right environment, the right play calling, the right everything, you could have extremely high-end seasons from Justin Fields. To me, it might be like a lesser version of Cam Newton for me, where people would have to understand all my Cam Newton takes. I think Cam Newton was like a above-average NFL quarterback with the ability to put one MVP caliber season together. I feel like Fields might, forget MVP caliber, but like maybe a really high-end season could be in the cards for Justin Fields with the right environment, with the right everything.
Yeah, I mean, he has taken steps in the right direction, even as a passer. It's just, I don't know if he's taken them quickly enough, and they need to keep going. Like that, the problem he's running into right now is that he might not have shown enough to be given the opportunity to keep developing. Like, he's reaching this crossroads now where he's going to probably be let go by the Bears this offseason. And if he doesn't find another team that's willing to jump on that freight train and say, yeah, we see what we like, we got 2 or 3 more years of this, then how does he keep getting better? That's his issue. It's like he might be running out of road to show that he can still get better.
All right, man, Bears by 3 in Chicago.
I'm going to go Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm going to take Atlanta as well. I don't love it, but I'm buying into Atlanta and Taylor Heineke. All right, San Francisco 49ers at the Washington Commanders. Niners favored by 12.5 at Washington, and Jacoby Brissett making his starting debut for Washington.
Yeah, the Sam Howell thing is done, unfortunately for him. Fortunately for Washington, I think Brissett does give them a better opportunity to win at this point, based off how Howell's been playing. Just a bounce-back game, I think, for San Francisco. Like, their offense is going to remind you that it's stupidly good. You're probably not going to slow it down. Certainly not Washington, who haven't shown the capacity to do much of that this season. I would imagine the 49ers look very much like the 49ers again. And as much as Brissett has been better than Sam Howell, I don't know that he's going to have a ton of joy against what is a very good 49ers defense.
Commanders have the second worst EPA per play allowed in the NFL. You feel that every week. There's busted coverages on the back end. The guys are running wide open. The only team worse is the Cardinals. Just a few weeks ago, we had the Niners putting up like 500 yards on the Cardinals on 35 plays or something ridiculous. I mean, it was like 10 yards per play just a few weeks ago. I know it's in Washington. Weather always could be an issue, out there.
37 and overcast.
Overcast. So a lot of clouds. I think the Niners are going to be okay.
Yeah. The Washington defense, they're one of the few teams that like fired the coordinator, presiding over a terrible unit and got no bump. So it's a deep-seated problem, whatever it is there in Washington. I think Del Rio was certainly part of the problem, but evidently he wasn't the source of the problem, or at least the getting rid of he wasn't the only problem. Getting rid of him didn't fix it. So it's a bad defense, and it's probably staying bad until the offseason when they can get new coaching in and go in a different direction.
Any concerns coming from San Francisco Monday night? I mean, they just ran into a Ravens team with a good defense, right?
Yes, and I don't even know how we've said this coming out of the week. I don't even know how much of it was the good defense and how much of it was just freaky plays that all went against them in the space of a few minutes.
Come on, give the Ravens proper credit.
I'm giving they played well and they took advantage of those plays, but we went through them all, like the turnovers. I don't think I've ever seen a blitzing corner bat the ball to another blitzing corner on the other side for an interception. I don't think I have ever seen that happen in decades of football. So you can't not put that down to a certain degree of luck, right? Because it's literally never happened before, or at least hasn't happened in decades. So they ran into a very good pass defense. We talked all season long. Baltimore, record-setting, blah, blah, blah. They also had the bounce of the ball never went their way in that game. So either one of those two things doesn't happen, they are immediately much better. Both of them doesn't happen, which this week against Washington, you would imagine that's the case, then they're way better, and they go back to being the 49ers.
12.5. I mean, the way that Washington potentially covers this or, pulls the upset is Brissett does look as good as he did in his relief outings, right? He does completely change the dynamic of this offense. Brissett's he's a good backup. He's not a great starter. I think we've seen that a lot over the last couple of years. He was very good last year with the Browns, just couldn't finish some games. But I could see Brissett maybe helping to keep the Commanders in this one. I just don't see how they stop San Francisco's offense. So 12.5 is a lot of points. Still like the Niners. Where are you going with this one?
Niners.
Yeah, I'll take them as well. Bouncing back from Monday night against the Ravens.
It's now 13, by the way.
Is it? Well, change it. Now I'll take Washington.
I'm still with the 49ers.
Okay. Our next partner, it's AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. We drink it every single day here on the PFF NFL podcast. Love AG1. Love kicking off my day with AG1 because I get my coffee, get my AG1, get all my nutrients into the system right away. Makes me feel great. Makes me feel great in the morning. Unstoppable. Ready to take things on. Gives me the clarity, the focus, everything I need, to go analyze football and do what I do. It's that health that I need in my life. I don't eat enough vegetables. I don't have enough nutrients coming from my regular diet. So AG1 is great to supplement my regular diet. Also love that great athletes. We have something in common with them as well because they like to drink AG1. They like taking care of their bodies. They drink their AG1, and I'm a huge fan of matching what they're doing because with every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with those 75 high-quality ingredients that give me the key daily nutrients to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's this micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every day. That's the key. It's for everybody. AG1, everybody here, associated with the PFF NFL podcast. Also love that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with the high-quality sourced ingredients. A win-win for all of us. It's a comprehensive solution if that's what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. You go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. Go check it out right now. All right, where are we here? Got to start cooking. Las Vegas Raiders at the Indianapolis Colts. Colts favored by 3.5 here.
Yeah, this is a line that jumped out to me as slightly strange, no?
I think it depends. I mean, look, the Raiders are playing excellent the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that has been dependent on turnovers? So we talk a lot about offense being the more consistent thing. The Raiders literally just won a football game against the Super Bowl champions without completing a pass after the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that happened because, Kansas City botched a handoff. That's an unforced error by the Raiders. And then they had a pick six. Forced error, but, a bad error by the Chiefs as well. That's how they won. I know they dominated the Chargers a couple weeks ago, but again, it was a lot of turnovers. So that's the key. And they're going to Indy, and, Colts are having a pretty good season. They're coming off a really disappointing effort last week against the Falcons, but Colts playing for a playoff spot here. And I think technically the Raiders, if they win out and the Chiefs lose out against the Bengals and the Chargers, if that happened, the Raiders would get the AFC West title. Just
rooting for that. That's some fun chaos.
You rooting for that chaos?
That would be funny.
Like if the Chiefs just
objectively funny,
legitimately imploded.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
No, it seems unlikely, but still, it would be pretty hilarious.
So what do you think in this one?
Well, as I say, I think that's a slightly strange line. I mean, I think the Raiders have shown the last few weeks, okay, yes, they relied on turnovers. They didn't do a whole lot in the passing game. That being said, I think there were plays to have been made. I mean, Davante Adams dropped passes that were thrown well by Aiden O'Connell against the Chiefs. Now, I think the Chiefs did a very good job in terms of physical coverage and, matching up with Davante Adams one-on-one. But there were passes there that, like, you would say 9 times out of 10, Davante Adams is coming down with that. Like it was a classic Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams back shoulder throw, even in tight coverage. He's been making those plays for the last, for his entire career, and he didn't make them against Kansas City. So I would say there are throws that would normally be made, and the Colts are not as good as Kansas City on defense. So I feel like the Raiders can still have success on offense, and their defense has been pretty good, even without the turnovers.
I see the chat saying Max Crosby's going to eat for the Raiders, and it's in my notes that you got to keep an eye on Max Crosby now.
Against your friend?
No, Braden Smith, I think, is going to be back. According to our depth chart, he's not on the injury report. Braden Smith, the Colts right tackle, he's been banged up in and out for much of the season. Very good right tackle overall. Had it been Blake Freeland, though, who's just 2 years away, he's just not ready. That would be an absolute disaster. The Colts have 2 pretty good tackles, Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith, when healthy. That will be a good matchup, right? Because when you look at the Chiefs last week and their offense against the Raiders, the story is very Chiefs-centric, and rightfully so, right? Patrick Mahomes, the most recognizable NFL player besides maybe Travis Kelce now. Mahomes has the worst game of his career, and there was so many ways to break that down. But I think the bottom line for Mahomes and the Chiefs is Mahomes was like looking at the rush, man. Like he was worried about where Max Crosby and Malcolm Koonce were every single play for the Raiders. And I want to give the Raiders defense so much credit. I wasn't expecting that. It looked like only Max Crosby and a few guys who have played good ball at various points in their career on this defense. Koonce has stepped up. Crosby's a baller. They're moving him around a little bit more. Yes. They're stunting him a bunch. Teams are they have to worry about Crosby and Koonce now. And that has been the key for this Raiders defense. They're working downhill, they're tackling, but it starts up front with those 2 edges.
I was literally looking that up. Previously, Max Crosby had been one of those players that only played on the left side of the defensive line, never moved, always lined up that one spot. This year, he is moving around a lot more because I saw this cut-up of like plays where he's chasing down Patrick Mahomes, and it jumped out how many of them came from the other side of the line.
Yeah.
And that is happening a lot more. It's getting close to 20% of his snaps are now coming from the other side of the line. So,
did he do that against the Chargers? Because last week they have Wanye Morris, 3rd-round rookie for the Chiefs. And on paper, it's like, yeah, we want Max Crosby against him more often.
Yeah.
Chargers, maybe not as much. But
no, he didn't do it almost at all against the Chargers.
So but that's interesting, right? Is that the Raiders are looking, and the Colts don't really have holes. Again, I don't know how healthy Braden Smith is, but the Colts have a good offensive line, and probably the best that the Raiders have seen in a few weeks here. So we'll see if they can keep that up. But yeah, it is interesting that they're willing to attack those matchups here.
Another interesting thing is that it's not necessarily by who's out there. I mean, he's a couple of games where he's barely done it at all. One of them was the Chargers, where it does make sense, right? They have a much stronger left tackle than they have a right tackle. But the previous game where he hadn't done it at all was the first time they played the Chiefs. So it's not necessarily – now, the tackle is different from that game, right? Donovan Smith was still the left tackle at that point.
The first game around? Yeah, I think he probably was.
So, but Donovan Smith, you would still say, is a potential weakness relative to the offensive line, even not necessarily as much as Wanya Morris, but certainly something that you could attack and you wouldn't deliberately stay away from the way you might with Rashawn Slater. But the point is, they are moving him around a lot more than they've done previous years, and that will only help his production.
So, yeah, I think it's a sneaky fun matchup here, Sam. I know the chat also mentions that Gardner Minshew is going to find Jack Jones, keep that pick six streak alive. Minshew's been a little bit better at taking care of the ball, but if you look at the whole season, ton of turnover-worthy plays from Minshew. Michael Pittman still in concussion protocol after that big hit that he took from DeMonte Casey on that Saturday game a couple weeks ago. Don't know if Pittman will be back for this game. The offense did not look crisp last week without him, and I think it's an underrated aspect of what the Colts have done when they were putting wins together. And, they're in this position where they're tied atop the AFC South record-wise. Pittman's had a lot of games where he's been the top option, and the offense just couldn't do much last week without him.
No, it's a rough-looking receiving core when he's not out there. It's one of those ones that doesn't look great even when he is out there, but when he's not, it's ugly looking. Passer rating when targeting Jack Jones this season, Jack Jones, the Patriot, 136.6. Jack Jones, the Raider, 31.5. And that doesn't, you don't get a bump for scoring on the interception.
Yeah, and then EPA is through the roof.
Right, exactly. Interestingly, that means when you add those two together or average them out, he ends up with 67.2, which is almost exactly what it was a year ago when it was 63.1. So it's like Jack Jones has ended up being the same player. It's just it's gone from, awful with the Patriots to amazing with the Raiders.
Well, Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham are getting Jack Jones to the Hall of Fame if he keeps this up. It's the next DeRon Bland here. Can he catch DeRon Bland?
As long as he's comfortable being second fiddle to that linebacker whose name I can't even remember anymore. The guy they're going to build a defense around.
Oh, Robert Spillane.
There you go, Spillane.
Yeah.
As long as
all
he's
right.
comfortable playing second fiddle to Robert Spillane in the defense.
Build around
He can
Spillane.
go to the Hall of Fame.
All right, Vegas getting 3.5. Colts favored by 3.5 here. Where are you going with this one? Sounds like I know.
Yeah, Vegas.
Yeah. I'll also take the Raiders. I'll buy into their little hype. And I'm also secretly rooting for the chaos that you mentioned. That would be – no, not rooting for anything.
Of course you are. You're rooting for it.
If the Chiefs did collapse somehow and the Raiders won out and won the division, that'd be kind of funny.
Cincinnati and Los Angeles, the Chargers, the division game. It could happen.
I'll tell you what else is going to be a fun one. I'm so mad that these are all in the 1 o'clock window. I'm mad at you, NFL. I cannot keep my eyes on all of this at the same time. Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans.
It does feel why not make it more of an even split?
Again, a couple times a year, they really try to highlight that 4 o'clock game and give it.
But there is no 4 o'clock game to highlight now.
It's Bengals Chiefs, and they just haven't pivoted to it's Browning.
You're just going to pretend that it's still the same game.
Yeah, they just haven't pivoted. They could have thrown 2 or 3 of these games into the 4 o'clock window.
Yeah, make it a more even split so that you can.
They will in Week 18. In Week 18, which again I'm not participating in, it'll be like 7 and 7 in the 1 o'clock and the 4 o'clock when they always split those up.
Yeah, that's what it should look like more often.
Yeah, I could deal with that. Reset here. Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Texans favored by 4.5. Will Levis and C.J. Stroud should both be back.
Both the rookies back.
Which gives us Levis, Stroud, 1. Their first matchup.
Yeah. Which is interesting because that's how.
Or is it? Is it 2? Shoot.
No, they didn't play the first time, did they?
Wasn't this one of Levis's first games?
Oh, no.
Ah, dude.
There was
somebody fact check me.
I think it actually was. No, because Stroud wasn't. Was that the game he got hurt in? This is a disaster.
Yeah, this is bad. This is bad.
No, it was Case Keenum was the first time. We're good.
Oh, that was just 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, Levis Stroud won.
Oh, they just played 2 weeks ago. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That was dumb.
But it was the throwback game.
Yeah, that was the overtime game. Man, I can't stand when division teams. I can't stand when they play 2 times in 3 weeks.
So Levis Stroud won.
Let's see. Levis Stroud won. Here we go. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be amazing.
Which is good because I had Levis above Stroud in my draft ranking.
Oh, this will
so far has looked great.
What are you rooting for? Justification.
Yeah. I need one game ever where Levis just balls out, outplays C.J. Stroud, and I can at least have 3 hours of vindication before Stroud goes to the Hall of Fame, and Levis may or may not keep the starting job long term.
Obviously, both Levis and Stroud have given a lot of hope for both teams. Stroud even more so than Levis. I mean,
right.
Every quarterback in the top 15 has had MVP hype at some point, but Stroud was getting that, right? He was elevating his team, leading comebacks. The last time we saw him, however, though, was the Jets game. It was a weather game. It was a tough Jets defense, but it was a disaster for Stroud for that offense. So that's the last thing we saw from Stroud. I think that hurts his overall production and numbers.
And the game before wasn't great either.
Yeah. So, again, even keel, PFF NFL podcast, we all admit, I mean, Stroud's been fantastic this year. But we always still want to see more data, more information. And again, I was saying, look, going back to Mahomes again, when Mahomes struggles, when Aaron Rodgers went through his struggles, there were these times when he just wouldn't play within structure and would only want to play outside of structure. And I was seeing hints of that from Stroud earlier this year. When his game is playing within structure, going through his reads, throwing pinpoint passes with great footwork, that is Stroud's game. And he slightly got out of that in a few games. And it still worked. He was outstanding outside the pocket. Like, that's not his game, but he was doing it well. And I was just saying, like, just don't lean on that too much, CJ. And then he did end up having his worst couple games after that. That's all. Just something to keep an eye on with Stroud. I want to see him run the offense and do what he does well, which is throw the ball accurately and on time, and don't try to create too much unless it's there, unless you have to. And when he has to, again, he's been pretty good at it. So that's what I'm watching for here with Stroud coming back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big game for them because Houston is now sitting there at number 8. You know, they're the first team on the outside looking in from the AFC point of view, even though they're 8-7. The Colts, though, are the team directly above them. Like, they have a shot to get in still, but they need some help, and they need to win games first and foremost. So Stroud coming back, obviously it's a different dynamic than it was with Case Keenum in their quarterback. But a couple of the last things we've seen from Stroud haven't been amazing. They not only did Stroud go down, but they've been getting banged up in terms of the receiving core as well. Obviously, Tank Dell with his broken leg is a difference from earlier in the season. But generally, that group has been not healthy, whereas it was earlier in the year. Like, it's a big game for them. Tennessee is a defense that can cause some issues. It's not, the Titans obviously haven't been good this year, but it's a test at least of whether he's back, whether he's ready to go. And then the other side, Houston's defense is really good as well.
We were trying to give so much credit to the Shanahan scheme, to our friend Bobby, to everybody about their ability not just to elevate quarterbacks systematically, but the offensive line.
Yeah.
And then you have a game like last week where, again, I mentioned Charlie Heck had like 10-plus pressures allowed. Charlie Heck playing right tackle again this week. They may have hit too many injuries up front. I think Tunsil's banged up. I mean, it's just not.
I mean, I think there's always a limit to that stuff. You can help and you can make things look better schematically, but if you have an absolute total liability at one of your key offensive line positions,
Tunsil's fine.
It's still, you're not going to be able to overcome that with scheme necessarily.
Both edges, Will Anderson hasn't played the last couple weeks, Jonathan Grenard. Both of those guys are questionable with ankles and did not participate in practice yesterday. And I think injuries are starting to catch up to Houston.
Yeah.
With Tennessee, again, they don't have a great offensive line, but if the Texans don't have their edge rushers to take advantage of it, I think Stroud, even without Tank Dell, though, there will be plays to be made on the outside against these Tennessee corners. So that's something to keep an eye on. And you never know what you're going to get from Will Levis. He's had a couple good games before the injury, always has that big playability. He's always going to try to leap over somebody or drop his shoulder into somebody. I mean, again, must watch, must see TV with Will Levis.
Yeah, I mean, also, I wonder how unencumbered he's going to be coming off that ankle injury. I mean, we've been in this weird season where
he won't change.
He won't change?
No.
You don't think? I mean, he might not change in terms. He's still going to launch his shoulder into people, but like, how spry is he going to be on that busted ankle? Or are we?
Oh, how spry! Yeah.
Yeah. Or are we in this world now where quarterbacks are just able to shoot it up, get out there with tape, and we're good? You never know that they're injured. Like Trevor Lawrence came back from an ankle injury, and the only evidence of it was some weird passes where, like, why did you throw the ball right to the safety there?
Right.
But you wouldn't have known. Like, if you didn't know that the week before he had an injury that looked like he was done. If you hadn't seen that and you just saw Trevor Lawrence in that game, you wouldn't have highlighted, hey, I think his ankle's hurt.
Mobility-wise, no,
so,
not at all.
Is that going to be the case for Levis, or is he going to be hobbling around the place and not quite 100% physically? Either way, like, the Levis thing to me, he's shown the flashes that everybody's been wanting to see from Bryce Young, and in a vaguely comparable situation in terms of awful offensive line. He's probably got some more weaponry in the pass game, but it's still not good. I mean, he's working in a bad situation, and he's made it work, or at least shown the flashes to be able to make it work, and outperformed Ryan Tannehill, who's obviously a veteran quarterback. Like, Bryce Young has not outperformed Andy Dalton, whereas Will Levis has outperformed Ryan Tannehill in his situation. So I think from a Tennessee point of view, you have to be very encouraged by what you've seen from Will Levis. It's just now we need to actually repair this whole thing around him and see where he can go.
All right, man. Houston favored by 4.5. I think it's going to be entertaining. I think the AFC South going forward is going to be very entertaining. Houston by 4.5.
Titans.
The Levis. Oh, man. Doubling down on Levis. Give me Houston covering the 4.5. The most important playoff implications here is if Jacksonville wins and the Texans and Colts both lose, the Jags have the division. They'll have the tiebreakers and they'll have the division. So that's that's what we're keeping an eye on for the AFC South. And then next week, I'm sure the scenarios will be out of this world. The last game in the 1 o'clock window, Arizona Cardinals at the Philadelphia Eagles, little NFC East matchup here. Cardinals-Eagles. Eagles favored by 10.5.
The Chicago Cardinals.
Chicago Cardinals.
Or wherever they were before they were the Chicago Cardinals.
I love when the Cardinals play the NFC East during the season. All the throwbacks. Eagles favored by 10.5 here. Eagles finished the season Giants, Cardinals, Giants in their games, right? So they went through that run, that lull. They beat the Giants last week. They should win these last two. And if the Niners slip up, the Eagles have a chance at that number 1 seed still.
The Racine Cardinals. That's where they were before, Chicago.
Is that in Illinois?
I would assume
Racine,
so.
Illinois?
I would guess so. I doubt they've moved at that point.
Sounds like Illinois. Yeah.
Before that, they were the Morgan Athletic Club.
Football's evolved, yeah.
It's come a long way.
It's grown.
The Morgan Athletic Club now has a giant stadium dome in the desert with a field that rolls out into the
When the NFL
sun.
did their top 100, I think they grabbed 5 players from the Morgan Athletic Club in the top 100.
Beatty Feathers.
Gil Brandt, rest in peace, was like telling you all about all these guys.
People got so mad at that. The idea that it might have been good players back in the 30s and 40s and whatever.
Yeah, it should have been post-merger. Anyway, let's go. I want a post-merger top 100. That'd be way more fun.
Yeah.
For everybody involved.
Since the merger. I mean, the Cardinals are not very good. The Eagles are quite good. Therefore, they should win quite comfortably.
I agree. The Eagles are the better bird. Better football team.
Eagle would kick the crap out of a Cardinal in the fight. I mean,
yeah, that's why it's 10.5.
Right.
Pretty clear. The one thing I'll say here is the Eagles' offense. I just want to see them play well. I mean, I'm not rooting for it. I'm just saying you want to see them play well into the playoffs. They have all the pieces. They have all the answers. I mentioned in the review show against the Giants last week where Devontae Smith was getting his and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. That feels like the best version of the Eagles' offense. It still exists. It's still there. It was very inconsistent during their tough stretch of games when they were playing the Niners and the Bills and the Cowboys twice and the whole deal. But that's what they're going to need come playoff time. My description of the Eagles being able to win in multiple ways, they need to get back to that. I do have concerns about Philly's defense getting into the playoffs, their corners, their back seven generally, the inconsistent pass rush. Is the pass rush inconsistent because they're not killing teams like they were last year? Like, what's the deal? They're still good, but it's not the great Eagles defensive line. I forget who it was. Was it Joe Buck on the commentary for this last game against the Giants that was sort of saying the problem the Eagles are facing right now is that
they could win by 50 in the next 3 games, and we're still not going to know if any of the problems are solved because the 2 games are against the Giants and then this Cardinals game, right? They're supposed to win all those games.
Right.
They're supposed to win them relatively comfortably. So all of the worries we had, the offense isn't firing on all cylinders and the defense isn't as good as last year, you're not going to know if that's fixed because the competition, the bar just got set so low that you couldn't help but clear it. So
Completely agree.
I think it's a very real concern. Like, you would expect Philadelphia's offense to look like it did last week, which is much better, and have the capacity to have that drive whenever they need it or if they get into a hole. And you would expect the defense to look a bit better because it's Arizona, and Arizona's offense is, it's talented, it can move the ball, it's feisty, but it's not great. So it's a game they should win by double digits, but it might not mean anything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that we learned a lot about the Eagles over the next couple of weeks. I agree. We might not learn anything until they get into round 2, potentially. Play Dallas, play San Francisco, play, maybe round 1 if they get a Rams matchup or, a tough one. But yeah, it's a take care of business game. It's why it's a 10-plus point spread. Where are you going in this one? Philly by 10.5. Oh, really quick for Arizona. I still believe Kyler Murray's playing for his future in Arizona. Maybe Arizona doesn't believe it. I don't know. But I still want to see more from Kyler in these last couple of weeks.
Okay.
I needed to say something about the Cardinals.
Oh, I see.
And plus, it's not a show if we don't say Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck.
The Barbarian.
He needs 5 sacks to reach 10, right?
Yeah. Is it 5, 4?
4 in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah. So he needs two this week.
All right. So Jalen Hurts this week. Stafford next week? No, Purdy next week.
Yeah, it's not, doesn't look great for the Barbarians' chances,
Just get a 4-sack game.
He needs one of those games where the 49ers run out of offensive linemen again, and he's going up against Colton McKivitz at left tackle,
happen.
and,
That could happen.
Yeah.
Philly by 10.5. Where are you going with this one?
Eagles.
I will also take the Eagles. I think they're gonna look good these last few weeks, and then see what happens getting into the playoffs. All right, into the 4:00 window. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Seattle Seahawks. It kicks off at 4:05. Seattle's favored by 3.5. A pair of 8-7 teams. What are they? What did I do here?
The level of preparation that goes
8-7. No, it was. I knew it. It was in my head. And then I doubted myself for a minute. I was like, wait, the Steelers do they have a winning record after all this? Yes, they do.
Yep.
So, yeah, if Tomlin loses the last 2 games, he'll lose that.
Right. He needs to lose both of them to lose
that
his record.
special streak. Seahawks coming off a magical couple weeks here. Drew Lock, game-winning touchdown against the Eagles. Geno Smith, game-winning touchdown against the Titans.
Magical. That's the word. The question is, does the Rudolph magic still function now that Christmas is out of the way?
What's magic versus magic?
I'm just going to say that I think his is a Christmas-specific magic, and it no longer functions.
We have my friend Pony, Pittsburgh media, the roller coaster ride that he's on.
Yeah.
Now that they're playing Seattle this week, Mason Rudolph in his 63 PFF grade, but he had a 96-yard touchdown or whatever it was, 86-yard touchdown.
Yep.
On a slant.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't Mason Rudolph be the next Geno Smith?
Why can't Mason Rudolph be the next Geno?
Look, I was a Mason Rudolph believer coming out of college.
Yeah.
I thought Mason Rudolph was pretty good. And, as I was tweeting yesterday about force multipliers. Sometimes the unquantifiable is a factor. And so is there some signal in the fact that the Steelers' offense is the best it's looked in years with Mason Rudolph under center last week?
The answer to the question is there is no reason he can't be the next Geno. It's just that it probably won't happen. Like, there's no reason the next guy, the next big-arm, toolsy quarterback coming into the draft can't be the next Josh Allen. Like, why can't this guy be the guy that goes from a 45% passer to being one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL and is one of the most dynamic playmakers in the league? Why can't it be him? Well, there's no reason it can't be. It's just that, generally speaking, like, one-of-a-kind historical outliers don't repeat again in a year or two later. So there's no reason that he can't be the next Geno Smith. It's just that he probably won't be because there won't be a next Geno Smith for a long time. Who was the previous Geno Smith before Geno?
Ryan Tannehill?
Maybe,
no,
yeah.
not as a backup. Rich Gannon.
Right, like a Rich
But those
Gannon.
guys did it differently. They were like middling starters
or like
above
Jim
average
Plunkett, or like you're going back a long time to find the previous Geno Smith.
We don't have to spend the whole time just answering Pony. It's just,
but a
couple months ago he was comparing Kenny Pickett to Joe Montana. So I'm just highlighting the roller coaster ride that is.
It probably won't happen. And not only will it probably not happen, it probably won't even last this week. I suspect Mason Rudolph turns back into a pumpkin.
Oh, wow. Right off the bat, huh?
Yeah. It was a Christmas miracle, and now it's not Christmas anymore.
You think he's only got that? He's only got that for that game, for Christmas weekend?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to run out of Rudolph puns here. Can't do it on New Year's Eve, you're saying. Doesn't work New Year's Eve.
Nuh-uh.
I really want to see Devin Witherspoon and George Pickens play against each other.
Yeah.
Witherspoon's been banged up the last couple of weeks. He's questionable. Hip injury. Does he have, he's the hip pointer, right? Does he have the pointer?
The pointer.
He's got a hip. Jordan Brooks also banged up for the Seahawks at linebacker. Seattle sitting here with the playoffs on the line. I mean, both teams with the playoffs on the line. A lot of implications. Let me find those. What else are you looking for in this game? Let's see. Pittsburgh. Can they clinch anything? I don't think so.
I want to know if
If they lose, they're getting Buffalo in, though, in various ways.
Right. I want to know if that Steelers back seven can do what they did on Christmas again. Like, you looked at that group on paper, and you're like, this shouldn't, not only should it not function, it should be getting lit up. I mean, they had no safeties. They're playing Patrick Peterson at safety and a guy, Eric Rowe, who they just basically signed off the street to come in because he's got experience playing safety in the NFL. Their linebackers are guys they've signed off the couch. They
brought back Miles Jack, and
who
this
retired.
week they just signed Jalen Smith.
Yeah, I mean,
which
this
would have been electric 6 years ago.
This is not a group that looks like it should be functioning at all, and yet it didn't just like keep its head above water in the last game. It was good. It made plays. It actually excelled. So that was one of those things that just made no sense. You look at that and you say, you can't have predicted this going into this game. There's no way this group should be performing the way it's performing in this game. Is that a weird source of Mike Tomlin magic, or was, again, that just one game and weird things can happen in one game?
It's tough to predict when the Mike Tomlin magic's going to happen, but again, as I said on the review show, back against the wall. It took them 3 weeks because their back was against the wall a couple different times. Back against the wall, they seem to step up. I mean, Alex Highsmith had a great game. T.J. Watt had a great game. Highsmith with a beautiful interception. Because the back seven was banged up, they've got, they always have their outside backers dropping into coverage and everything, but they're getting, great interceptions from Alex Highsmith. That's how they pulled it all together. It is going to be tough to do that again.
The Steelers don't generally like to, trank with cornerbacks or anything, but this is another one of those matchups where, remember when Washington allowed Emmanuel Forbes to be one-on-one with DK Metcalf, or A.J. Brown, rather? And it's like, why? That's just malpractice. Like, he's outweighed by 50 pounds, and you have somebody on the defense for whom that isn't the case, right? You have a 200-plus pound corner on the other side. Why would you let that matchup happen? Well, the Steelers, on one side, have Levi Wallace, who's like 180 pounds and lightweight and generally gets, handled by most people. And on the other side, you have Joey Porter Jr., who is a 6'2", 195-pound corner. Again, like, if you let Levi Wallace go against DK Metcalf, you deserve the punishment that comes your way.
One more thing looking ahead here. You mentioned the Steelers and the Tomlin record and everything. If the Ravens win and they clinch the number 1 seed, they could rest their starters next week against Pittsburgh.
But would be a similar case to the Lions and the Vikings thing of you would be doing it against a division rival, potentially helping them.
Yeah. And on the other hand, Seattle, if they win, and they're also rooting for that Sunday Night Football tie to get in. Well, the win and a tie on Sunday Night Football between Packers Vikings, they're in. But Seattle has the Cardinals next week. So Seattle, I mentioned the Eagles surviving their stretch. Seattle survived their stretch, pulled that game off against the Eagles, and now they're on the cusp of making the playoffs here. Geno Smith playing really well when he's been healthy these last few weeks and making big plays in crunch time. So I think I know where you're going, but Seattle favored by 3.5 here at home.
Seahawks. We need a loss so that the last game of the season dictates whether Tomlin has his record or not. Can't be wrapped up in week 17.
I know, and then the Ravens have to decide, do they play it out?
Right.
Give me Pittsburgh.
That's another element. What if they get to decide?
Yeah.
But
But then it's like, do you want to let them win and then Tomlin stays in the division? Do you actually want that if you're Baltimore? If he loses, does he get fired? Then you're playing that game. 3D chess in the AFC North. I'll take the Steelers to cover the 3.5 on the road. 425, Chargers at the Broncos. Broncos favored by 3.5. Russell Wilson has been sat down, benched by the Broncos. Jarrett Stidham making the start. It'll now be the second straight start that Jarrett Stidham is the replacement for the overpriced starter who is only sitting pretty much so that he doesn't get injured, so that the team doesn't have to pay him more money. Jarrett Stidham, specialist.
He's now becoming the Grim Reaper meme, with the doors and the blood trail. Like, Jarrett, if your team signs Jarrett Stidham and you're a, not necessarily secure veteran quarterback, get worried.
I already have Giants fans predicting Stidham to the Giants next year and starting week 18, 17, whatever, for Daniel Jones or whatever. So that's what we have here. There's all sorts of spin coming out. This football decision. It's so Denver's not eliminated from playoff contention.
Oh, that's what makes it really interesting.
We didn't talk about them yesterday on our elimination show, which you should go check out. They're not eliminated. And so Sean Payton's we're just trying to win week 17 game here. That's all we're trying to do.
Game. Gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah.
We can't call him friend of the show anymore because we're rivals in our award-winning attempt to
whisper his name so people don't hear it.
Greg with 2 G's,
yeah.
Rosenthal, tweeted that Sean Payton versus Russell Wilson in a passive-aggressive source-off is going to be like prime Brady Manning. Like, that's what's happening right now is both teams, their people are in full action to just feed their side of the story to the media. And there's plenty of media who are perfectly willing to just copy and paste those texts.
And Sean, in that source off, Sean was like trying to pull Russ's legs out from under him, stole his office.
Yep.
Right? I mean, how's Russ? Russ was probably had it all wired and set up, and he took his office away.
I mean, that's the whole PR infrastructure gone right there. He's chopped his PR legs out from under him.
Yeah. Sean has the upper hand there.
Yeah.
Because he took the office. Sean presumably has his own office.
You would think.
Russ doesn't. He has a locker. What are you going to do from a locker?
Not much.
It's tough.
It is an interesting thing, though, that so the reports were that this has been percolating for a while. They basically, it sounds like they tried to blackmail him. They came to him in October and said, hey, we've basically decided at this point you're not the guy. We're going to go in a different direction. And if you don't waive the injury clause in your contract that gives you 37 more million guarantees if you get hurt the rest of the year, we're going to have to sit you down because we don't want to risk that money, right? And that was questionable enough that the NFLPA and lawyers got involved. And I don't know if that's what dragged it out until December the 28th before they finally did it. But this has been coming for a while, and yet it finally happens 2 weeks to go before the end of the season with the playoffs still there.
Yeah, I mean, think about what was happening in October, right? The defense was one of the worst in NFL history. They were going to play the Chiefs 2 out of the next 3 weeks, and they were probably staring 1-8.
Yeah.
Down. And if they were 1-8, he would have been sat then.
Right.
Just because they were like, well, this is a disaster. We have to get out from under this. And then they started winning games, right? Then they beat Kansas City. They beat Buffalo. They started winning these football games, and they were in the mix. They were 1 game out of first place just 2 weeks ago in the AFC West. And then Christmas Eve was a disaster.
Because that's the big difference between this and the Raiders situation, right? Is that the Raiders, they basically sat him down as soon as they were eliminated last year.
Yeah.
Whereas Denver is still alive and they're sitting him down.
I mean, they're mostly eliminated. I think if any other team wins in the AFC, they're probably out. I haven't looked at it closely. I mean, the Raiders have an easier track at the AFC West, I think, than the Broncos at this point.
Yes.
I believe. Again, I haven't looked at it closely.
No, Denver are the bottom of they're literally the last team that isn't technically eliminated in terms of chances.
Yeah, so look, I get it from a business standpoint, but you're right. It's interesting that they went at it earlier. Makes you I mean, look, that's what Russ signed up for, You signed up for an injury clause. You have to understand when you negotiate for something, there are also your unintended consequences are real, right? Now, I know Russ is never going to think, well, man, I could suck in 2 years and they could sit me so I don't get my injury money. But he wasn't thinking about that. He's like, of course, this is what I want.
It is fairly funny that they're going to get rid of him before the extension actually kicks in. If they just left him on the contract they traded for, he'd he would have. It's
spend-
ending now.
We'll spend more offseason time, I think, or whatever, other time talking about that. But that ended up being the biggest mistake for the Broncos. Like, I don't mind the aggressive move and giving up picks to go get a quarterback for a team that at that time was just treading water at QB. I don't mind it, but it was when they just out of goodwill extended him and added all that money.
Yeah, well, so goodwill. It came months after the trade, right? Like they traded for him in March. They didn't sign the new deal till the start of August, I think. I do think, though, that it was kind of contingent on the deal. Like, Russ had a no-trade clause, right? So he dictated where he could go.
Yeah.
I do feel that there was some sort of, like, handshake involved of, I'm only coming here if you're extending me. And then it just took the months to work out the details, like crap like this, right? The injury clause, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think they could have just sort of it would have been rough if that was the way it worked and they said, hey, Russ, we're going to extend you if you come here. He waives the no trade clause. They trade for him and then go, joking, you're under contract for 2 years. That wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, we'll have to revisit that. Remember at the time, Russ was in Seattle. He was going on the Dan Patrick show. You know, they have to build around me. And then Seattle's like, we'll build around you. We signed Gabe Jackson to play guard. So part of it was probably like, we got to have a happy Russ to get the best Russ, so we're gonna do well by him. Denver, they're paying for it right now. So Jarrett Stidham's getting the start for Denver. Both Chargers are eliminated on the other side. They gave Buffalo a game last week in Giff's first game as head coach. Denver by 3.5. Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this game with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. He looked pretty good for like a game when he came in late last year, but. Yeah. That's probably not.
Easton Stick looked better last week, his second start. So could be a sneaky good game with no implications.
Yeah. God, I don't know what to make of this game. Backup quarterbacks everywhere. Hurt people everywhere. Denver.
I'll take Denver. Backup QB bump for Denver.
Backup QB bump.
I mean, if Stidham comes in and deals with Sean Payton, I can't wait to see what Payton wants to do at QB. That's going to be.
Well, particularly with where they are, having given up what they've given up for not just Russ, but for Sean Payton. Yeah. And now where they are in terms of having won enough games to torpedo draft stock.
Like, hey, Drew, can you still throw?
He said he couldn't. He has to throw left-handed to
his
his
kids.
kids.
He can't even pick his arm up.
Yeah.
I mean, he was still completing 70% of his passes doing that. With the Saints.
Being able to lift his arm above his shoulder.
All right, last game in the 4 o'clock window. Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 7. Chiefs sitting here at 9-6, of course. Worst Patrick Mahomes team that we've seen, and the worst game for Mahomes the other day. A lot of things not going well for that Kansas City offense. But again, the defense has played really well. And the thing that could get the Chiefs offense right here, Bengals defense, Chargers defense, to finish the season. They do play two of the bottom 5 teams in EPA per play allowed, 2 of the worst defenses, pass defenses in the NFL. Maybe this is the thing that gets Kansas City back on track heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, so you got 2 elements of this game, right? Does Jake Browning go back to the player he was where he was looking really good for a few weeks? Or is he the player he was against Pittsburgh 2 weeks in either end of this run of his? Kansas City is a really good defense. That's one thing that isn't being talked about enough this season, I think, because all the focus is on the struggles on the offense and why they can't get out of their own way and can't stop making mistakes and is Taylor Swift a curse. Their defense is awesome this year. It really is good. And so it's a really tough challenge for Jake Browning to try and bounce back against. And then obviously the other side of the ball, it's been the same story all season long with Kansas City. The only new element to it is, for the first time, really, Mahomes added to the problems. Like all season long, it's been Mahomes trying his best to drag mistake-ridden offensive playmakers to wins. And then last week, he started making mistakes as well. Now, was that just one game where everyone has them? Every single player has a game where they stink randomly. Was that his this year? Or has something snapped and he's now just been they have dragged Mahomes down to the level they've been at all season long, and he's now part of the problem as well.
I'm still of the belief with the elite quarterbacks, and I think there's been 5 over the last 20 years. And I always cite them. It's Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Breeze, and Mahomes, the guys that are at a different level. And I honestly don't think there's a strategy to stop those guys. Like, I don't think there's a specific game plan where you say, this will attack their weaknesses. We got them. I think it's almost always self-inflicted, or there's other stuff, or it's the team is falling apart around them, and it's making them play differently, right? So with Rodgers, I said a couple hours ago on the show, there were points where Rodgers was less productive in his career because he wasn't playing within structure. For whatever reason, wasn't trusting the offense, his receivers, was just in a slump, right? Brady had down years when the receiving talent wasn't as good. Mahomes, it feels like, I don't think there's a strategy to stop him necessarily. But now that you have maybe backup left tackle, he's seeing the rush a little bit more, and weeks of frustration built up to the point where he's not playing within structure. And it's not the only time where he's had a slump in his career, like a mini slump production-wise. 2021, the whole too high narrative, and they're taking away the deep ball, and I'm not playing patient. We were saying a lot of the same stuff, right? He's trying to break the pocket too much. He's trying to play outside of structure. He's not taking the easy stuff when it's there. And then they adjusted. They did well with that last year. And now he's back in this, like, he's not playing within structure. It's because it's not like they don't have open receivers. They have open receivers. They always scheme up open receivers in Kansas City. That's always there. This year, they're not catching the ball effectively when they're open or at key times in the game. So all that stuff was adding up. And so, I think Mahomes will break out of it at some point. I think the offense will break out of it. I don't know if it's this year.
Right.
But I do think the biggest thing is, like, this offseason, Kansas City is attacking the receiver room with, vigor.
They're going to do the same thing they did with the offensive line, but
yes,
at receiver this time.
Now, they're probably a little bit more hamstrung by Cap and Mahomes' contract than they were 2 years ago doing that. But that's what the result's going to be. So I think they'll get out of it. I think Mahomes will get out of it. But, when you talk about greatness, he's a great player. Greatness is not about being the best at every single point in every single checkpoint in your career. It's always about ebbs and flows and adjusting and bouncing back, and that's where we are with Kansas City right now. I think they'll bounce back, and I think they'll do it against a bad Kansas City defense. And what you said, Kansas City's defense, they deserve a ton of credit. They haven't been great against the run, and I do think that is the one place where you can get them. And if the Bengals get a lead, Kansas City hasn't made their special comebacks, in part because Mahomes and the offense, but also because the defense has not stopped opposing running games when they've needed to, including last week.
Yeah, I think everything that's happening to Mahomes this season with the Chiefs' offensive playmakers letting him down, I think this is all playing into the area of his game that I think has been the weakest for his NFL career. Like, if there has been a game plan against Mahomes, it has been the general trend of, too high, force him to be patient. He's not as patient as, like, one of Tom Brady's greatest strengths was always patience. That guy would be perfectly happy to throw the ball 60 times for 5 yards a pop if that was the most effective way of winning the game. And he never got impatient doing that, which is remarkable because almost every other quarterback snaps. They reach a point where they get so frustrated doing that, they take a shot, and the shot is what kills you because you make a mistake. And even if it's not a turnover, you just don't complete the pass, and now you're behind the chains, and the drive sputters out. Brady and Manning actually were incredibly patient with those types of games. Mahomes is good at it, but I don't think he's as patient, and he clearly gets frustrated when he can't make those big plays. And he's done a good job, I think, of modifying that element of his behavior and his game in recent years because he's had to. But now I think it's making it even more frustrating because he's not as efficient doing it as he used to be. So now he knows that if they're going to make a mistake, if somebody drops the ball, if somebody, if there's an error in there somewhere, if there's a holding call, I think he's acutely aware now of how much of a problem that is to the offense. So it makes him want to push a bit more and force things and make more mistakes than he used to. And the whole thing is sort of spiraling. So I think it's an issue. And you're right, it might not resolve itself this year. The other element of this game I think that's fun to watch is both pass rushes. Trey Hendrickson going up against the left side of that Kansas City offensive line.
Wanye.
Yeah, that feels like a problem. But equally, the same thing I think is true on the other side. You go to Kansas City's defense, they have pass rushes that can cause problems.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think even just back to the Chiefs offense again, too, Lou Anarumo and the Bengals defense, and they've had some success over the last few years. Of course, Joe Burrow was the quarterback. It coincided with that. But Anarumo's done a really nice job mixing things up schematically against Mahomes and the Chiefs. So even though I don't think they have the horses in the last couple, this year versus last couple years, that's going to be an interesting matchup. I also wonder how much, like Kansas City and Andy Reid, they never like to rely on the run. I wonder how much they just take that pressure off Mahomes and just try to run the ball a little bit more and actually lean on that more than they ever had. One last thing I'll add too, and I saw a graphic on this, but I knew it kind of mentally. Every team the Chiefs have played the last few weeks have had extra rest coming in. They had the Raiders coming off of a Thursday night game, so they had extra couple days. They had the Patriots coming off a Thursday night game, had an extra couple days. I think they had the Bills off a bye. This is the first time that's actually back to somewhat normal. Bengals have an extra day because they played on Saturday, and the Chiefs played on Monday, so I guess it's still in effect this week. But just something to keep an eye on for this week. I do wonder if Browning can get back to form, right? He's been great against non-Steelers teams. So if he can get back to form, I think Cincinnati can make this a game. But I think I'm going Chiefs here to cover the 7 and bounce back from Christmas disaster.
I think the Chiefs will be better, but I'm going to go with the Bengals keeping it within 7.
All right. I think I have about 5 minutes before I have to sprint out of here.
Nice.
Sunday Night Football. Green Bay Packers at the Minnesota Vikings. New Year's Eve night. Packers-Vikings. Vikings favored by 2 against the Pack.
Yep, both 7 and 8 teams. The Vikings, Kevin O'Connell has basically said he has no earthly idea who is going to quarterback the team at this point. And I think sometimes teams say that, because they think there's a competitive advantage of not telling the opposition who to prepare for. I think Kevin O'Connell genuinely doesn't know who he wants to start. Like, he's now frustrated with all of his quarterbacks. He had Josh Dobbs, who looked like he was a guy briefly and then couldn't move the ball at all. And then he has Nick Mullins, who can move the ball perfectly easily between turnover-worthy plays, which happen every other drive. So now he's looking at this and going, I don't know what to do. I've got one guy that can't function, and I've got another guy who can't get out of his own way for more than 7 straight plays. And in the middle, I've got a rookie who had like one nice drive and then got concussed. So I don't know what to do with that. I think there's a pretty good chance that's true. And I don't even know what the right option is for them.
I do wonder if this is a better Mullins moved the ball so well where, again, it's like if you just don't have 7 turnover-worthy plays, or in the Cincinnati game, 2, including the butt pick 2, Mullins will move the ball. Like, against this Packers defense that is giving a lot of room for opposing receivers. Mm-hmm. Mullins has played well outside of the disastrous 9 plays over the last 2 weeks.
But the one element that I don't know necessarily goes away when you face a worse defense is like terrible decisions with the ball. Because that's the thing, right? Like Green Bay, that's the element here. Green Bay's defense has been so bad recently that most quarterbacks are going to have their best day against them, right? But your best day doesn't stop you randomly throwing the ball to a safety.
Based off my overreaction and what could happen here, based off where Mullins, he had 7 last week, but he's had a lot of red zone turnovers here, right? Cincinnati to end the game last week against Detroit. The butt pick was close to that. Do you go Mullins in between the 20s?
Yes.
Because Dobbs' magic has been red zone this year, right? Scramble drill, just getting the QB run game involved in the red zone. This actually might be the place to run the 2 QB system and have red zone quarterback Joshua Dobbs.
Love it. Love it. Love the idea.
You like 1 to 2 of my ideas per year, and I think that's the second one. So
no, it's fascinating.
Good year for me.
For a completely different style and results and all those kinds of things, Mullins and Dobbs have the exact same EPA per play as quarterback of the Vikings.
How about that?
Right?
They got there in different ways.
That's what I'm saying. Completely different problems, but apparently has resulted in the exact same EPA per play.
I think EPA per play, like me, I don't love it assigning it to a quarterback, but I think the context and how you get there is interesting, right?
Yeah.
On the other side, Jair Alexander has been suspended by the Packers.
Yes,
if you haven't heard this story,
it's amazing.
It's because last week in Carolina, Jair Alexander, who is not elected captain for the Packers,
but is from Charlotte,
so
decided that gave him enough reason to just put himself with the captains and go out for the coin toss.
Went out for the coin toss.
And then make the coin toss.
and then chose defense,
Yes.
which isn't one of the choices you get
No.
when you win the toss.
And the refs tried to save him. Did save him, I guess. He said, "Hey, we want to play on defense." And the ref was like, "Do you mean defer?" It's like, "Sure." Yeah. Sounds right.
I don't think enough people know this. Again, we talked about it off air, and I feel like I explain this once or twice a year. But the NFL does not allow you to choose offense or defense. We partner with EA Sports and Madden and everything, but Madden has led us astray through the years. You win the coin toss and you choose offense or defense in Madden. That's not how it really goes. You choose to defer your option to the second half, or you choose your option in the first half. The option gives you the option to choose offense or defense. And if you choose defense, well, the other team gets the option in the second half. So theoretically, Jair Alexander was very close to choosing defense in the first half, and then the Panthers being able to choose what they wanted in the second half would also be offense. And so every now and again, a couple times in history, teams have kicked off both halves.
Yeah.
Because they chose the wrong things.
Right.
Because you don't choose offense, defense, you choose the option to choose.
Yes. If you are making the choice in the first half, you choose to have the ball.
Anytime you have the choice, you have to take offense.
Right.
Is the thing.
Exactly. So when you do make that call in the first half, you choose to have the ball, not to play defense, because otherwise you are literally just giving away a possession for nothing.
So anyway, Jair will not be there, so we are out of a Jair Alexander, Justin Jefferson matchup, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Packers defense has been rough. Jordan Love and those young playmakers still very intriguing. I think the future's bright for the Packers, given how we don't know what's going to happen with Minnesota's QB situation.
Who would you
Packers
start?
defense is rough. Honestly, I would go Mullins-Dobbs combo. I would do the combo.
You'd do the combo?
I would do the combo right now.
Between the Cardinals did that with Kurt Warner and Matt Leinart.
Yeah.
And they did it the opposite. So the 49ers did it with Bill Walsh way back in the day, where they would have Steve DeBerg drive to the red zone, and then Joe Montana. The red zone was seen as the easier thing. So they were like, Joe Montana comes in the red zone and just get it over the line. You come in and take the like vulturing a touchdown, right?
Yeah.
And then it flipped. When the Cardinals did it, the red zone was seen as the more difficult thing. So Matt Leinart was the between the 20s quarterback, and then Kurt Warner would come in for the difficult part of actually getting it into the end zone. So that's the way you would go with. You would go Mullins between the 20s, and then Dobbs to just add the rushing element.
Mullins' arm in tighter windows, his decision-making in tighter windows has not been great. Josh Dobbs' mobility and his ability to run, I think both of those work well. So I'm going Mullins-Dobbs combo. Where's Matt Collar on it? Get me on Collar's show. We'll break this down.
I'm here for it.
For the Vikings. All right. I got to go.
Okay.
Vikings by 2. Who are you choosing here? Both teams are still in the playoff picture.
Yeah.
So they have to win.
I mean, the Vikings they're the NFC's version of the Texans. They're the first team ready to pounce if somebody slips out of the wild card spots. And the Packers are right behind them.
The Vikings play the Lions next week. There's a good chance the Lions are locked into the 3 seed next week and Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Don't play their players. We'll see.
Man, I don't know about this game. Let's go Minnesota at home.
All right. I'll take Green Bay to cover the 2. We'll see what Harry has.
We'll see.
Last week, Harry had 9. You had 8. I had 4.
God damn it.
Yeah. I had a rough week last week. I'll tally him up.
How far behind your child are we?
Wait, what is this?
On the season?
Oh, no. It was 9-9-5.
Oh, good. So I didn't lose to the small child.
I got Baltimore there. I took San Francisco.
I just need to know how far we're behind.
Oh, Harry took San Francisco.
On the year.
Yeah. I'll find out at some point. All right, that's it. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. You'll be back here tomorrow talking Thursday Night Football.
Yep. Go vote for us to win an award. It's in the description of the show or my pinned tweet at PFF_Sam.
I got to run. Sprint into the car. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. I'll see you again Tuesday morning.
At 9.
9 a.m., January 2nd. See you next year reviewing Week 17.